Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship for 2022. And tonight marks round 5 of the 12-round calendar, and my goodness, what a season it has been so far, and what fantastic racing we have lying in store as our drivers make their way towards the end of the first half of the season. But before we can get to the end of the first half, of course, round number 6, we must complete round number 5, and today we're here in Austria at the Red Bull Ring, where our drivers will be taking on the circuit that is full of power zones and also some very heavy braking zones. Now, of course, this being the second of our broadcasts at the Red Bull Ring and the racing having occurred on Wednesday earlier this week, it is the case that we are bringing you a post-round broadcast or a post-race broadcast, however you'd like to phrase it, of Lobby 2, of our focus being on the lobby sponsored by IMB Racewear, and we'll introduce our title sponsor for this lobby very shortly. But before we get onto that, just a little bit of admin first and foremost. Tonight's schedule, times in British Summertime, that's BST or UTC +1, are as follows. In approximately just under 14 minutes, 8 o'clock this evening, we'll begin underway with the 20-minute qualifying session to determine our grid order for the purposes of the sprint race. That's race number 1. And that'll follow immediately after, being a 15-minute race where the strategy is all about getting to the front of your respective class and then holding on to lead that class until the finish to get the maximum possible points. And if you can get fastest lap as well, that's an extra 2 points to go into the kitty. After that, we'll be taking a brief break before returning for approximately 5 to 9 this evening for the build-up to the second of our 2 races this evening, and that is the 60-minute feature race where, of course, there is the mandatory pit stop in that space, and therefore there's the all-important strategic element of when do you choose to pit. And we'll have to wait and see how that plays out in practice for all of our drivers and whether they pit at the right time, and now the strategy, or whether they get it wrong and end up losing out on those opportunities. Now, as for the broadcast, it's being brought to you via one of 3 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, if you are a YouTube user, you can tune in via the official NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel. That's just go onto YouTube and search NXTGEN Racing. Secondly, if you are a Facebook user, you can go to facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing and you'll be able to tune in there. Or last but not least, if you are a Twitch user, you can go to twitch.tv/TX1for1 and tune in via Twitch. And who is TX1for1? Well, that's me, your broadcaster and commentator for this series, covering both Lobby 1 and Lobby 2. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX1for1 or Britain a Spit, and I'll be bringing you all the action from start to finish. Now, without further ado, we must hand over to our sponsor this lobby, and that is IMB Racewear, our title sponsor. We must introduce them because without them, we'd not be able to bring you all the racing action. Well, who are IMB Racewear, I hear you ask? IMB Racewear, in short, it delivers racewear for both sim and real-life races, which enables the racer to make the impact they always wanted. What sets IMB Racewear apart from the competition, however, is that their racewear prides itself on individuality as it is designed for you, by you, meaning that each product is fully customizable, unlike your typical off-the-shelf racewear products. Whether you're looking for racing gloves, racing shoes or team clothing, there are no limits on the levels of customization available. If you want to know more and get your hands on your own bespoke racewear today, be sure to head to their official website. That is imbracewear.com. Indeed, I may be going there very soon to pick up some of my own sim racing gloves. I haven't quite done it yet, but it is on my to-do list at some point. And that website again, imbracewear.com. And of course, we're very grateful to IMB Racewear for the title sponsorship of Lobby 2. And in terms of their contribution, not just helping us run this series and backing us in running this series, but also contributing to the prize pool for Lobby 2, and in particular to our GT3 class winners, where there's a set of custom race gloves up for grabs for our GT3 class winners. And there's also, that goes on top of the cash prize pool, which is to be confirmed for the GT3 drivers, and our LMP 2 AM class drivers in this lobby will have a cash prize pool, and the value of that is to be confirmed. But thank you once again to IMB Racewear. Now, we talked about our drivers and we'll come on to the standings very shortly, but we must talk a little bit about our calendar. And well, it is the case that the first 4 rounds before we had our first season break, it was the case that we were touring the North American continent. We started off at Watkins Glen on the 6th of April. We then went to the roller coaster ride that was Road Atlanta. We then went to the more severe and more adrenaline-fueled roller coaster ride that was the Canadian Motorsport Tyre Park on the 20th of April. And last time out, it was the case 2 weeks ago on the 27th of April, we went to the Daytona road course for the first of our 3 super endurance 2-hour race rounds. We then had a week's break, and now we return. The race had occurred on the 11th of May, so that was Wednesday of this week, but we're bringing you now on the 13th of May, and it is the case. We're in Austria at the Red Bull Ring, ahead of some fantastic racing action that lies in wait at a circuit which really kicks off the season's tour of continental Europe. And then we'll be going to Hockenheim in a week's time. That'll be the German circuit there, the twisty German circuit at that. Then we're going to the straight and linear circuit of Monza, with chicanes breaking up the straights on the 25th of May, before heading to Spa, the Belgian circuit, the venerable Belgian circuit. How could we forget it? For the second of our three 2-hour super endurance rounds, I should say, on the 1st of June. After that, we'll be taking another break before kicking off the final third of the season, which begins on the British Isles, particularly with Silverstone on the 15th of June, before heading all the way across the Asia-Pacific region for a visit to the Japanese island, and indeed with it, Suzuka. And then it'll be the Nürburgring. We return to the Nürburgring circuit. I believe that is the Vidal GP-style circuit, before wrapping things up with the 24-hour Le Mans circuit, also known as Circuit de la Sarthe, and that will be the third and final of our Super Endurance 2-hour rounds, and that will be on the 6th of July. The racing action happens, but for Lobby 2, we'll bring you that broadcast on the 8th of July. But with the calendar covered, now let's come on to our Drivers' Championship standings. And well, the stories, there are three unique stories at play here. Starting off with the LMP2 AM class, it is the case that Stephan Wessels is your leader at this point in time on 154 points, with another great drive at Daytona, a drive built on fortitude in the fact it went horribly wrong midway through the race, and he had to recover in the end to third place to keep his championship lead alive. And indeed, that championship lead over Sam Holman has extended to a small degree. That championship lead now standing at 17 points over Holman, who really has been the driver to show a lot of consistency time in time again, and that's why Holman right now is so far up in the championship standings. Whilst he hasn't had the spotlight result that Stephan Wessels has had on a number of occasions, Holman really has been the driver banging in result after result, and the same could be said of Michael Price, only 3 points behind indeed Price and Holman. A great rivalry between the two of them. We're expecting more of that here tonight. Paul Scott MP4 on 110 points with a great performance at the Daytona circuit, finishing second only behind Paul Walton in the end, and Paul Walton they're now able to commit to the series full time, now really starting to make his presence felt with what was a brilliant win, and it was a dramatic win as well between himself and Paul Scott, the two of them literally neck and neck on pace all the way through, but in the end it was an unfortunate drive-through error for what was Paul Scott in terms of drive-through penalty, and that, well, I believe in fact it was a stop and go penalty for Paul Scott, which told the story in the difference there, and Paul Walton picking up in the win. But it is the case now, the two of them only separated by 2 points, so you can imagine that rivalry will only intensify tonight. And really, our top 5 right now, we've got our eyes on them because they should all be coming together at the Red Bull Ring, and it should be fantastic. Will it be the case that Stephan Wessels can keep 1 foot ahead of the competition? Will Paul Walton blow everyone away with absolutely sensational pace, or will we see Holman, Price or Scott really come to the top? But we can't forget the rest of our drivers as well, who could spring some surprises. Paul Williams, in the case of Team Tetra Rouge, drive out on 95 points. A difficult day last time out at Daytona, and now he's going to be back hopefully tonight for another round of racing, only 6 points ahead of Richard Stanton, and in this case one of the 2 Stanton family members who are in the cars looking to get some more points after a great performance at Daytona. Jack Wyborn not picking up any points at Daytona after a difficult day, 77 points to his name, 5 ahead of Jim Stanton, and Jim Stanton, the second of the 2 Stanton brothers in this standings, having a very difficult day at the office at Daytona. Nothing going right for Jim Stanton. He'll be looking to turn that around tonight. Barry Meacham, or Baz Meacham as he's known in short, on 70 points. If I remember correctly, was not able to take to the circuit at Daytona, but he is back and full in action, the Welshman, tonight. And then Mark Baker and Jonathan Collins complete your championship standings there, with Collins picking up a great set of points going to his tally. Meanwhile, the story in the GT3 PRO class. Well, if it's the case that our top 5 is very fierce and close in the LMP2 AM class, the GT3 Pros, the story is slightly different. We have 2 drivers vying for the spotlight. That's Jeremy de Boever, your championship leader going into this round on 173 points. He's only 4 points ahead of Lucas Romano, however. And it is the case that these two share near parity in terms of results. It is the case that, if I remember correctly, it is Lucas Romano with 3 wins to Jeremy de Boever's 2, or it may be the other way around, but the two of them have really dominated the podium in their class. Although let's not forget Peter Lemkins' absolutely dominant form at Watkins Glen in the season opener. We'll come to him very shortly. And then it's the case of the best of the rest. DD Verlaming there in P3, them challenged by DB driver, DB1 team in particular, supporting Jeremy de Boever there in the team on 142 points, and he's really looking to bring up the rear guard for de Boever, and can he perhaps get a result over Lucas Romano that will give him an advantage. Matthew Prouting as well, a great performance for Matthew Prouting at Daytona, really arresting what has been a decline of of form in rounds 2 and 3, and being able to turn it around, we expect plenty from Prouton tonight on 108 points. But he's only 1 point ahead of Peter Lemkins, who after taking all the headlines in the season opener and finishing close behind his teammate Lucas Romano in both races at Road Atlanta, has really started to drop off the pace in terms of consistency, but we're expecting Lemkins to come back strong tonight. And let's not forget as well, remember, Lucas Romano with that disaster with regards to his strategy, denying him in the win. He had to serve a post-race penalty due to the fact that he did not change tyres over the course of the race due to a technical error in the pit, and as a result he wasn't allowed the win, and that's what Jeremy Boever capitalised on to take the win in the end, plus also his brilliant form. But it is the case that drivers have dropped results, and could we see Peter Lemkins pick up some drop points today? Dirt Bounce in P6 only a further point behind, and it is then the case that we do have a sizable gap of what is the best part of 28 points down to Gus Franken in at P7 then. We're expecting plenty from Gus Franken tonight to take the pursuit to Dirt Bounce. The two drivers, of course, great friends off the circuit, but good rivals on the circuit. Sean Scooter picking up a decent run of form at Daytona, albeit I think he felt as though there was more points on the table, and we're looking forward to seeing the Racing Team Astra driver come back strong tonight. We do believe he's feeling more confident on European soil. And then Lambert Wedder wrapping up our standings there in the GT3 PRO Championship. Meanwhile, in the GT3 AM Championship, we do have Navarro de Boever leading at the moment on 14 points ahead of what is Tristan Dino Brega, 170 to 156. But these two really have been the two drivers to take the form of the class at this point. But de Boever really has had the advantage in terms of the consistency of results. Meanwhile, Dino Brega has had the advantage on pace, but it's the inconsistency and technical reliability issues that have held Dino Brega backward. And as a result, we would hope that tonight, with those issues not being in play, we should see the two championship contenders, or the major contenders, go toe-to-toe here at the Red Bull Ring. But let's not count out Lorenzo Gualtieri, of course, who, with great form, however, a little bit of inconsistency, particularly in the last two rounds, on 145 points, could snatch a win tonight, and that would put him right back up there. We're a 25-point advantage over Arjan Kregel, and it is the case that Arjan Kregel, nicknamed really the driver at the moment who's looking to finish on the podium each and every time, we'll be looking forward to seeing whether he can get himself onto the podium here at the Red Bull Ring in one or two of the races, given the fact that he has been shown that growing form. James Slate's only 2 points behind there in P5. It is the case that Slate's really been one of those drivers battling for the midfield positions and to be in the top 5, and we look forward to seeing more from him tonight. With Davide Favo only a further 2 points behind, and then Mark Sykes a further 7 points behind, and it is the case that Favo and Mark Sykes and then Elwin Sykes, not related, Mark and Elwin, it is the case they are sharing the same surname but two different families. It is one of those cases whereby Favo and the two Sykeses really are battling for those midfield positions, and a great rivalry forming between the three of them. And who could forget Kurt Van Hoornacker, of course, down in P9, but Van Hoornacker having a disaster of a day at Daytona with technical issues in the car, the engine breaking down in the Mercedes and having to retire. And it is the case that Van Hoornacker, unlike his teammate Navarro de Boever, falling away a bit in the championship. He's had a couple of very difficult rounds, but he'll be looking to try and turn things around tonight. Chris Keenan in P10 on 37 points, and it is the case Chris Keenan wrapping up our top 10 there, and we look forward to seeing more from the Belgian as the season progresses. Gareth Mills down in P11, taken to the circuit in the series for the first time at Daytona, and we hope to see more of the South African driver, of course a fan favourite for GM Racing. And then last but not least, Liam Tack in at P12 and not picking up any points last time out at Daytona. Now, as for the team standings in the Mark Sykes Design Team Championship, we can see, of course, these teams across both lobbies. Verano Motorsport currently leading the way on 336 points, 20 points clear of NXTGEN Racing with Sam Cases UK, who in turn are only 1 point ahead of Challenged by DB1 and RP Motorsport Pro-Am, whereby Challenged by DB1 are only ahead based on result countback there in P3. It's Racing Team Astra Blue completing the top 5, whereby after them we've got NXTGEN Racing 5 points behind there in a P6, and then a sizable gap of almost what is 40 points to Racing Team Astra Team Orange in P7, and really leading the way as the best of the rest. Challenged by DB2 there in P8 on 259 points, 6 clear of Team Racing Netherlands, and Hilliard Esport there in the top 10 position of P10 on 248 points. But at any moment we've dropped points, and they've dropped quite a few in the last couple of rounds, particularly at Daytona, when the majority of the team had to retire the car, and only one of their members, if I remember correctly, made it home in the top 5. It is the case that Hilliard Esport right now know that every point matters. Outside the top 10, looking to get into the top 10 tonight, Crest Autosport with Apex Tracks, the growing outfit, and really starting to build that pace, along with RD Simsport, only a further 3 points behind on 224, and a further 4 behind CXR Project Black, looking to arrest what has been a difficult run of form in the opening third of the season. Excite Racing P14 ahead of DRS Esports LMS1, and it's Crest Autosport Ferrari in P16 on 203 points, 3 ahead of TGC Racing. Austrian Esports, RP Motorsports Senior and Team Tetrage complete our top 20, and outside the top 20, but not to be forgotten about, Holman Racing in P21 ahead of MRC Team, and it's DRS Esport LMS2 ahead of BRM, and then last but not least, TGC Bottom Split Heroes. Well, as the practice session our drives in is concluding right now, let's talk about the circuit briefly. So we're at the Red Bull Ring today, located in the Spielberg region, or the Styrian region, I should say, the location of Spielberg, Styria, Austria. And this case, it is the case that this circuit, made up of 9 corners, or 10 depending on how you treat the left-hand kink and the right towards Remus at turn 2. This circuit known for its straights, its slipstream, and also its heavy braking zones, which is all about being the last on the brakes if you want to get the moves done and want to maximise the lap time. But let's not forget as well, there's a very tricky middle and last section where it's about medium speed apexes and trail braking, so it's going to be a different challenge for our drivers tonight, where the focus is going to be about being bold on the brakes and knowing how much speed you can carry through each and every corner. And remember, particularly with turns 2 and 3, the sooner you can get the car past the apex and turned, and the sooner you can get on the throttle, that's going to be critical to the lap time. And this circuit map provided to us by simracingwiki.com, as always, and we're very appreciative to them for providing us with these images. Now, as for our rules tonight, of course, without the rules we can't go racing. We do have a change to the rules, which is highlighted in red, a major change, and we'll talk about that very shortly. But to rehash the rules, it is the case that our setup, our drivers are running the iRacing sprint setup for tonight's races. This is a fixed setup series, and they're running the sprint setup whether they're in an LMP2 car or a GT3. In qualifying, we are seeing a major difference. We are trialling tonight, splitting the session into 2 equal halves. The first for LMP2s, the second for GT3s. And they'll be approximately equal, albeit leaning a little bit more in the favour of the LMP2s. At the 10-minute mark into the session, the LMP2s will be called into the pits, and once they've come in, the GT3s can go out on circuit for the remainder of the qualifying session. And that's based on feedback from you guys and girls, the viewers, and also from our drivers, how to promote a safer qualifying session where our drivers can compete a little bit more closely. Sprint race, meanwhile, the first of our 2 races, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. And in the feature race, firstly, the grid shall be set as a reverse grid based on the results of the sprint. The grid shall be separated into car classes, not driver classes, car classes. So it'll be the case that our LMP2 class drivers will start approximately 10 seconds ahead of the GT3s, and our GT3 class drivers will be intermixed, so the pros can qualify in amongst the AMs. They will not be segregated. There shall be 1 mandatory pit stop, which requires drivers to take on fuel. Changing tyres is entirely optional. Each driver shall have 1 fast repair available. And last but not least, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 20 or more instant points. My goodness, that is a lot of rules and regulation to go through, but I know what you're all here for. I'm here for it too. It is the racing, and well, we go into qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. And how are our drivers getting on in this qualifying session right now? Well, we do take a look, and we can see it is the case that as they make the way on around here to go on, well, they're on their current flying laps at the moment. They're opening flying laps. We look to the return of Baz Meacham here as he makes his way around through turn number 5 and down towards turn 6. And it is the case he has been severely missed as the Welsh member as he makes his way around right now. We're very happy to see him return to the asphalt as he comes out of turn number 7 up towards 8, and as he rolls on through here looking quite composed at the moment. As our lap times are coming in, we say hello to a number of you in the different chats here, and do not be shy, feel free to say hi. We can see all 3 chats, whether they be Facebook, YouTube, alternatively Twitch. We say hello to RJ and Craigle in the Twitch chat, to Darren Doherty in the YouTube chat, and then Katie Eames in the Facebook chat. And indeed, Katie Eames saying this lobby is always a good watch, and happy Friday, guys, and happy Friday to you too, Katie, and to all of you tuning in, happy Friday to you all. It is Friday, of course, the weekend is here, it's around the corner, and well, I hope you've got a load of fantastic things planned for another weekend. If you're based in the UK, we should have quite a bit of a scorcher this weekend in the UK from what I'm gathering, although storms may be coming in a little bit late. And speaking of storms, rain is coming to iRacing in the near future. We don't know when, but we know it is coming. I can tell you one driver right now who's trying to storm away with this qualifying session like he normally tries to, and that is Stephan Wessels right now, who are currently provision pole on a 1:20.790, 6 tenths ahead of Paul Walton. And well, here was always the big question we wanted to ask and get an answer to, which is, when we see these 2 out on circuit together in a qualifying session, we weren't able to see that, of course, at Daytona because of the fact that the Daytona grid was based on the reverse of championship standings, but now they're both on the same tarmac together in qualifying. Who is going to be the better of the two, of Wessels and Walton, in a qualifying shootout? Right now, it seems as though first blood drawn by Wessels, but wait to see what Walton fires back with here here as he crosses the line. He shoots back with a lap that is only 700ths faster, and that is a 120.719. But you can imagine it's going to be close between these two. As meanwhile, Jim Stanton coming out the final corner to complete a flying lap. As he crosses the line there, he improves to P4, and we're almost already halfway in to the LMP2 class session as they make the way on around the circuit to the LMP2 drivers. And as they come around, it is the case you can see on the circuit map there in the top right corner of your screen. We've got our drivers' initials rather than their placements, just to make things a little bit clearer. We see the other member of the Stanton family here, Richard Stanton, of course, a major family unit. The drivers racing as a privateer unit, and as they make the way around, Stanton not improving there. In fact, I think he backed off for the purposes of that lap as he rolls through turn 1 and up towards turn number 2 in short order. He has got tucked in behind him Jonathan Collins here. And to be fair, Collins trying to utilise the slipstream off of the back of Richard Stanton to his advantage, but of course he does have that pragmatic approach, which is he's trying to maximise his lap time but not to get too close to the back of Stanton in front for the simple reason he taps the back of Stanton and then he's going to have to abort the lap, and indeed he closed up a bit too much there to Stanton, who gets it wrong coming out of turn number 2, out of Remus, and that's cost him very dearly. But right now we look back towards the head of the pack in terms of drives going on around, and we can see here as he comes on through the final corner, Stephan Wessels comes on around, and we will ride on board with him as he goes on to another lap here. So coming across the timeline and making his way towards turn 1, braking at the 100 metre board here, coming down the gears to second gear, getting on the throttle immediately as he clears the apex, keeping 2 wheels in the white lines, that's legal. Now charging his way all the way up towards Remus here, trying to get the draft of a Jack Wyborn there, who's on an out lap, has left the pits. Wyborn pulls aside, making his way up into Remus, uphill braking zone here, braking as late as he dares, 110 metres from apex, and as he comes down through the gearbox to first gear, turns through the apex, and now powers out. Purple in sector 1 already, a good opening sector now as he makes his way down towards turn number 3, in towards the downhill braking zone here for Stephan Wessels. Has to brake a little bit earlier here because the car goes away with the road, braking at about 125 metres, comes all the way down to first gear before stamping on the loud pedal there, using the full runoff area of the exit curve, and now through the kink of 4 before making his way up into turn 5. Now we go into medium speed apex. His trail braking is of essence here as he rolls the car through early apex to turn 5 there, and now making his way down towards turn 6. A quick dab of the brake before rolling the car down, shifting on apex there from 3rd to 2nd. Interestingly, we haven't seen too much of that, but using that to help rotate the car before now powering through turn 7, flat out up the hill. Now dab of the brakes into turn number 8, the first of the 2 tricky right-handers. Trail braking his way down to 3rd gear, runs a little bit wide, but you can use that full width of the circuit. Now coming out of the final corner, coming out of corner A1, and as he makes his way to the timeline, what will Wessels do? He was purple in the first 2 sectors, down in his final sector compared to his previous best, but it's a 120.623. Paul Walton strikes back for 20.733, not improving. Wessels does seem to now, with 3 minutes to go, have a bit more of an advantage here in this qualifying session as he makes his way up towards turn number 2. Now, is it the case that it's going to stay Wessels' way, or will Paul Walton pull a surprise out of the bag? We saw this in the Apex Racing Academy lobby earlier in the week. Remember, for those of you who did not tune in, Chris Daines was looking to only qualify in what would have been 3rd place, and he saved it all to the very last lap to deliver what was a sensational pole lap of a 20.1. Now, we are looking at potentially 20.5, 20.4s here in what is Lobby 2 in the IMB Raceware lobby, and right now Paul Walton, the fastest of anybody in Sector 1. What about in Sector 2 as he makes his way through the Sector 2 timeline, of course, being in the downhill run from 5 into 6, and as he makes his way into turn 5 right now, looking very composed. I mean, these drives, of course, run on the limit, although it wouldn't look like it. They look as smooth as butter here. He's down, he's not improved in Sector 2, and well, to give you an idea, he's still faster than Wessels in Sector 2 by 0.05 of a second. So Walton is stronger in Sector 2 out of the 2 of them as he makes his way now through the final couple of corners here. This is where the lap is made or lost because it's so tricky to carry the speed through turns 8 and 9 as he makes way out of 9 there. Looks very compact coming out of the corner. Will it be for Walton? He straight lines it to the line. He crosses, it's a 20.674. He improves, but it's not enough to take pole. He's now half a tenth off of Wessels precisely. Meanwhile, Jack Wyborn comes across the line and improves to what is a 123.494. That puts him P8 in class as he makes his way on to another lap. He's only got 2 more laps to go here as he comes on through, and there is Mark Baker in the Team Tetra Rouge machine, making his way down towards turn number 2 here. And I'm noticing the absence of Paul Williams. It looks as though only Mark Baker from Team Tetra Rouge is attending tonight, which is a shame. We do love to see both of the drivers of the team out there in their very distinct liveries. Of course, Paul Williams in the green livery, and meanwhile Mark Baker in the what is the blue livery. I almost said red livery there for some reason. I'm thinking of Stanton Brothers cars. But as we continue to see Mark Baker making his way down towards turn number 3 at this point, coming up behind Wyborn, I think he may feel as though he's been impeded a little bit here on the lap. Of course, Wyborn will argue that he's on a fair lap as we're here, and our GT3 drivers are starting to get themselves ready to leave the pit lane, as we still do have the best part of what is 45 seconds of the LMP class session left to go in qualifying. But as we see there, Wyborn going a bit wide. He still stays on the lap here. I think Mark Baker right now will be feeling as though he's being blocked, but he will just about have enough time to get onto another lap. But I think he needs to navigate Wyborn. Meanwhile, Wessels coming out to the final corner once again here. Will he be able to improve as Baz Meachem's into the pits? Wessels does not improve. What about Walton? Does he strike back? He does. He strikes back and takes provisional pole. There's one more lap between the pair of them here, and it is the case now. Walton is ahead by only 6 thousandths of a second. Now, do keep in mind that we do not know if some of these laps are invalid. That's some other limitations that we have with looking back at a replay file and not the live race. We will wait and find out, but I think Walton may feel he's got the job done, but it has been a very close shootout between the two of them. And Baz Meachem in the pits, he is almost 8 tenths down on Wessels there, and well, 7.5 tenths to be precise, and Meachem I think feels he's done enough to be there on that second row, and the same for Stanton, who's now finished his qualifying session, I do believe. Well, he's right at the end of finishing it, as most of our GT3 drivers are now poised to leave the pit lane. They're just waiting for the LMPs to come in, and they'll want them to hurry in, as we see Jonathan Collins coming out the final corner. He is on a lap here. He hasn't improved in sectors 1 or 2, so what about sector 3? Is this going to be a magical final sector? He comes to the line, and he does not improve. But I tell you one driver right now who is on a hugely improving lap, and he's just gone purple in sector 2. He's fighting back at Walton here, and that is Stephan Wessels. He's personal best sector 1. He's purple sector 2. One more sector to go. Could this be the lap that takes pole back? We'll wait and see. He comes out the final corner, and what will Wessels deliver as he makes his way to the line? It's going to be, it's pole position at 20.435. He's left it all to the last moment, and assuming that lap is valid, Stephan Wessels is going to be your pole sitter ahead of Paul Walton here at the Red Bull Ring, as now the GT3's pouring out. We've got a slight connectivity issue here. I'm not exactly sure what's happened. Oh, there we go. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. That has now been resolved, but all of our GT3 drivers are making their way out onto the circuit. And as they do, it is the case that we can see all of them wanting to make up time, because they've already lost a minute of their session. In fact, by the time they get to the timeline to go on to a lap, they will have lost the best part of what is about 2 to 2.5 minutes of their qualifying sessions. They will not have long to put laps in. With their average lap being 1.5 minutes, they've probably got at most 4 qualifying laps here, and they need to get a move on. And right at the head of that pack, we do believe, unless we're very much mistaken, is the Murray de Boever here, and it does look as though our GT3 AM championship leader has picked the right time to come out of the pits. In fact, he's got himself out there very quickly and looking very good at the moment, the Murray de Boever. Now, I did have the opportunity in the build-up to tonight to have a chat with a couple of drivers, but in particular, Jeremy de Boever, who I had the chance to speak to. We'll talk more about what he had to say in a brief while, but first, it's only courtesy that we should give you an onboard lap with one of our GT3 drivers, and who better than the up-and-coming star of Murray de Boever, our GT3 AM Championship leader, as he takes us around in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. Making his way across the timeline here, accelerating up towards turn number 1, going up into 5th gear, and now looking to brake. Look at his brake marker, the 100-meter board, coming down to 2nd gear, rolling the car, taking a lot of apex curve though, and that launches the car. Got to be very careful that he caught the car very nicely there, to be fair, and as he makes his way up towards turn 2, I think he might feel a little bit unsettled there, that his first lap was clattered over the apex curve, that sausage curve in the centre of the apex. As he comes up towards green, so looking for his brake marker, that 100-meter board, and as he rolls the car into the hairpin, coming down to 1st gear, taking a bit too much speed through the apex there, I feel, although you can take that line of going very deep into turn 2. There's multiple lines to turn 2, but you may want to set that back a little bit for his next lap. As he rolls down towards turn number 3, is the case braking on down here, looking at about 120 metres, coming down the gearbox. He's going very, very deep then. I think the Murray de Boever feeling as though there's a lot more confidence in the car than the car's willing to give him as he comes through 4 and up towards 5. But you can see where he's trying to push the limits already, because he knows he hasn't got long. And I think this is going to be a very quick learning experience for de Boever. He knows where the grip's going to be the next time around as he rolls through 5 and down into 6 here. And you'll see just a quick dab of the brakes, dropping down the revs. In fact, downshifting to 2nd, much like with the LMP2 class drivers. They're using that downshift to 2nd to help rotate the car and build up the power through 7 and heading up towards turn number 8. And as he makes his way into the very tricky right-hander of turn 8, rolling the car in 4th gear, downshift to 3rd on apex, and now bringing it down into turn number 9, final corner, down to 2nd gear. And as he makes his way out. Well, this is not going to be a perfect lap by any means. We'll see him cross the timing line, and as he does, what's it going to be? It's a 31.8. I think he'll feel there's at least a second out there as more laps are coming in. DDD Blaming there goes visual upon the GT3 Pro class for a brief while, 30.281, and we'll see even more laps coming in right now as we see Mark Sykes in the Audi R8 LMS from Next Gen Racing with Sam Cases UK rolling his way down through turn number 8 and into 9. And the Audi should go quite strong here, particularly in the final two sectors, less so in sector 1 where it's a power sector, but Mark Sykes comes across the line, and what's it going to be? It's going to be a 32.5. That puts him provisional P6 in the GT3 AM class, but we've still got plenty of laps, and we see a return here of Sean Scooter. Now, will he be able to find that form which eluded him at Daytona, massively eluded him, with a 45.6 for his first lap? I think he was using that as a sighting lap, given the fact he hasn't got too much time, but I like what Scooter's done here. He's given himself a lot of space to the rest of the GT3s. He's let them go up the road, and what he's hoping is that with all the GT3 cars going out ahead of him, he gives himself space to warm up the car, but also they will warm up the track for him, put down some extra rubber, and therefore he can use that to maximise his lap times. He'll be one of the last drivers to do a lap around here, and you may have seen it in real world motorsport where some drivers decide to try and be the very last driver to take to the circuit in qualifying. Well, soon track conditions do not severely change. That's the best place to be. You want to be the person who does the final lap, because the circuit has the maximum possible grip, is up to the maximum possible temperature typically, and that's where you'll get the best possible lap times. As we see here is the case that Sean Scooter right now rolling down into turn number 3. As he does, we do look at we talked about Navarro de Boever earlier. We look to his father now, Jeremy de Boever, and I had the chance to catch up to Jeremy in the build-up to tonight as we see him making his way through A1 and across the timeline very shortly, and then changed by DB1 Mercedes. Remembering, of course, he was our classified winner at Daytona last time out in the GT3 Pro class. Currently P3 there in the GT3 Pro qualifications as it currently stands. And what he was saying to me in the build-up to tonight, because it's the case that the Boever family find themselves in a very unique position in the fact it's the father who leads the GT3 Pro class and it's the son who leads the GT3 AM class. He was saying that for Austria, trying to maintain the rhythm that they did in the other races at the start of the season, maintain their standard of racing, and for the first time this season they've recognised it is the fact that both father and son are on top of the official classification tables. So they're going to aim to try and finish on the podium, the pair of them, particularly Jeremy in his class is going to look to finish on the podium, the GT3 class in both races, and stay as close as possible to Lucas Romano. It's the case that Jeremy de Boever feels that Lucas Romano is his main rival, and to be fair, we talked about that in the pre-show and the fact how close the two of them have been and how much they've both been shown in the spotlight. And they feel, well, it's the case that Jeremy feels he's got a strong car under him, the Mercedes. The fact it's not the fastest around the Red Bull ring, but it's very nice to drive, and for the rest of his concerns, he just wants to stay out of trouble, have great races and have great battles, and indeed that's what we love to see here in Next Gen Racing. And when he was talking about his son, I asked him briefly about his son. He was very proud to talk about his son, very proud of what Navarro is doing at the moment in the championship. And to be fair, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen how far Navarro has come since his early days in the GT3 Championship Season 1, I do recommend after this season's over, go back and take a look. You'll see how far he has come by comparison. That's a great achievement, and indeed a lot of progress made by a lot of our drivers here. But he was saying it's the case that Navarro is looking to defend his first place versus Tristan Dino Brega, but they know that Tristan is a very fast driver, and it's the case now that Navarro de Boever needs to drive smart, much like Jeremy de Boever versus Lucas Romano. It is the case that sometimes it's all about driving smart rather than being the fastest guy out on the circuit in order to pick up the points. And well, it is the case that they're both still learning, and particularly Navarro de Boever still looking to learn, and he should not be afraid to make mistakes, has been told by his father. It is the case that all of the team at Changed by DB are very proud of him, and well, we'll wait to see how the family get on here today. Speaking of Tristan Dino Brega, he is currently the fastest of our GT3 AM drivers. He's actually P3 overall in the GT3 class. In fact, he's not too far for DDD Blaming and Lucas Romano's lap times as we see he rolls on through turn number 3. Then he's got Navarro de Boever literally tucked in behind him. And I do wonder whether the two of them have stepped over the top of one another here, and whether it might be the case that they both feel as though they're getting in one another's way, because you can see it's almost as if they're in race condition with the closeness they're running as they're rolling down through turn number 5 and into 6. But Tristan Dino Brega right now and Navarro de Boever both not on laps here. They'll only really have one more lap, and they're right at the head of the pack. But it's Dino Brega right now who has a 9/10 of a second advantage over James Slates. My goodness, that is a huge gap and a half. And right now I think it's the story of who's going to simply qualify behind him as they make the way, and you can see he goes into the pit. It does Tristan Dino Brega. I think he feels he's got it done because he's coming, he's not going to get another lap, and James Slates does the same. Well, in fact, he's leaving the pit lane now. And Slates is not going to have enough time to go around, so it's the case that the Audi R8 there is going to go back out on circuit just to put in a bit more lap time, but he's not going to have that opportunity to set another lap. So he's left it all on the line now to his lap that he has put in, which is 31.19, and Navarro de Bola is only the best part of 200ths behind him. And another driver who we should say hello to in terms of seeing him on the circuit today, and we're really happy to see him returning, is the Dutchman, Lambert Wedder. He's been away for a couple of rounds, but we see the Dutchman has returned for Team Racing Netherlands, and as he makes his way out of turn number 1 here, he is tucked in behind his teammate in front of him. I believe that's one of his teammates, unless I'm very much mistaken. It does look as I think that's one of the Team Racing Netherlands machines with him. I think that's Arjen Kregel, and they swap places. They do indeed, as they make their way through at Remus corner here. And well, it is the case that Lambert Wedder, the GT3 PRO driver, currently P6 in class. Meanwhile, Arjen Kregel, P6 in the GT3 AM class. So they're both matching positions. But as we look to the chat, we say hello to Sean Scudder in the YouTube chat and saying it's Friday the 13th. Indeed, unlucky for some, but not all. And we can see Jeremy over there in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, Jeremy. And also to Stephan Wessels in the YouTube chat. And also hello there to Elwin Sykes saying shout out to all the boys in the IMB lobby, and shout out to you, Elwin. But as our drivers continue to make their way around, this qualifying session almost at its closure now, and as it comes to its last moments, we see Elwin Sykes here making his way around, and of course Racing Team Astra Orange with some very similar liveries to Team Racing Netherlands Orange, so we do try and keep that distinction. The difference between the two of them is the fact that the Racing Team Astra livery has quite a lot more black on it by comparison, and also the RTA logo on the side, that very distinctive, very proud standing logo, a fantastic logo I must say from a livery design perspective. And as they roll on through right now, it is the case that Elwin Sykes here currently down in P8 in the McLaren MP4 12C, a bit of a unicorn car. We rarely see it in this series, but it is Elwin Sykes who's running. The checkered flag is out for this qualifying session, and Elwin Sykes improves to 31.603, but it's not enough to move him from P8 in class. As we hear that Davide Fava has set a lap, he's going to be P11, and Mark Arrowsmith has not set a lap at all. He will be starting last of the class. And meanwhile, making their way on around here, we do have DDD Blaming. Now, did he get onto a lap? I'm not 100% sure, but I can tell you one driver who is on a lap, he's aborted it, he's come into the pits, and that is Sean Scudder. He's P3 in the GT3 Pro class, and well, as it currently stands, DDD Blaming still making his way on around. I think this lap is within time as he comes rolling on down, as we say hello to Jerry, the race car driver, in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, Jerry. Hope you're doing well. And well, that checker flag is out, and that's going to be an aborted lap surely for DDD Blaming, with James Slate's down the apex of 5. Well, he had to back out a little bit, wait and see, but given our AM drives now have completed qualifying, it does mean that Tristan Di Nobrega has taken pole position in the end by what is a sizable margin of 5.5 tenths versus Navarro de Boever in the GT3 AM class. James Slate's P3. What about DDD Blaming? He's going to peel into the pit surely here. Yeah, he does indeed. So that will mean that Lucas Romano is on pole for the GT3 Pro class ahead of DDD Blaming, and it'll be Sean Scudder behind them. Well, my goodness. But in fact, it's the case that Tristan Di Nobrega will be in between them because he's been able to out-qualify Sean Scudder by a small margin. As our drivers will make their way into the pits very shortly. The last of our drivers who will come around will be Kurt Van Hoornacker here in the what is the changed by DB2 Audi R8, and of course enjoying this Audi machine as he rolls them through turn number 5, and as he comes them down right now. And the livery looking quite similar to the Team WRT livery that you see in real world on the Fanatec GT World Challenge Championship in terms of the summer styling, but it's a very distinctive livery there run by Challenge. But that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take you through that grid order. As we take you through the grid, it is Stephan Wessels who lines up on pole in the end in the LMP2 Pro class, and in the out qualifying Paul Walton by almost 2 tenths of a second when all is said and done. Baz Meacham lines up P3 on his return, a great qualifying session for Baz Meacham. Alongside him, Jim Stanton, the privateer, in P4, with Sam Holman and Richard Stanton line up on the 3rd row, and it's Mark Baker and Jonathan Collins on row number 4, with Jack Wybom from MRC team completing the LMP2 class. He starts off row number 5, with Lucas Romano, the RP Motorsport Pro-Am, taking that pole position in the GT3 Pro class. We then have Tristan Di Nobrega line up in P11, and he'll be joined on row number 6 by Sean Scudder, and this is with all the clarification of track limits in those qualifying laps. And then behind them on the 7th row is Jeremy de Boever and DDD Blaming there on row number 7. Then changed by DB1 outfit locking out row 7, with Navarro de Boever there in P15, taking that P2 in the end behind pole sitter in the GT3 AM class of Tristan Di Nobrega, and Dirt Bounce alongside him on row number 8. Kurt Van Hoenacker kicks off our 9th row there from a change by DB2 with Mark Sykes there from Next Gen Racing with Sam Cases UK. And then we have Arjen Kregel and Lambert Wedder line up on our 10th row, followed by Gareth Mills and Elwin Sykes on our 11th row. GM Racing just ahead of Racing Team Astra Orange, both drivers from South Africa, of course. And then we have Peter Lempkins, the pro driver there, P23, a difficult qualifying session for the Ferrari driver. And he is joined on row number 12 by Liam Tack from TGC Racing. Behind them on row number 13, Chris Keenan from MRC team, and he is joined on row 13 by Davide Favo, Racing Team Astra Orange's driver. And then on the final row, James Slate and Mark Arrowsmith make our 14th and final row there. And well, we now look to our order as they make the way on around, and indeed all our drivers pulling off, and in particular it is first and foremost our LMP2 class drivers who make their way on around, and they will be starting 10 seconds up the road from our GT3 class drivers. And as we look to the blimp here, you can see it is the case that they're making their way on through, although I think we've got a couple of drivers really badly out of position. And in fact, we've got Sam Holman starting from the pit lane, and we've got what is Mark Baker and Jack Wyborn having to catch up to the LMP2 class drivers very rapidly. So they're out of sequence, and a bit further back we've got our GT3s closing on up. But right now we do look to the heads of the pack here as we wait for Stephan Wessels to take us away for the first 15 minutes of racing action here at the Red Bull Ring. It's lights out, and away we go here for 15 minutes of racing. The sprint in the IMB Raceway lobbies. You see immediately Paul Walton trying to go on the offensive around the outside, but watch out there for Jim Stanton, who's trying to get in the middle of the turn. And we see Baz Meacham there making a bit of contact almost with what was Jim Stanton, but he was forced to the inside and wasn't given any space to move. Meacham finding himself in that difficult place and he's lost out. But meanwhile, well, we wanted to talk about the battle between the two of them. Walton's got the better run out of turn 1 up towards Remus at 2, but meanwhile Stephan Wessels immediately coming back on the counter offensive here as they make the way into the hairpin. Jim Stanton makes his way through, but Richard Stanton makes a mistake. I think he was turned slightly by a tap and he's lost out dearly. Meanwhile, behind them, it's Tristan Dina-Brega, who's had an absolute flying start in the GT3 AM class, and he's almost up into the lead of the GT3's overall, battling with Lucas Romano, the GT3 Pro leader. But as they make the way on around right now, we look from them to a bit further down, and you see all our GT3s lining up into the sequence here and all getting into the toe nice and early on as they make the way down towards turn number 3. And further back, we can see the rear picture, Chris Keenan there battling with Liam Tack. This is the battle for what is P7 in the AM class. This is going to be Liam Tack up the inside, and James Slates comes in heavy, and there's a tap there with Chris Keenan, and I think that's a little bit of a bold move by James Slates, and I think it's the case that Chris Keenan's not going to be too pleased with that. But meanwhile, we look back up towards the front of the pack, and Stephan Wessels has found his way back past Paul Walton as they come to the end of lap number 1 here at the Red Bull Ring. So as they come out the final corner, it's Wessels leading by only a couple of attempts ahead of Paul Walton in P2, followed by Jim Stanton in P3. Having a good start, they're getting ahead of Baz Meacham, who's in P4, followed by Jonathan Collins P5. Then we've got Jack Wyborn P6, Mark Baker P7 as they make the way up towards turn 1 for the second time of asking. And Richard Stanton, after that spin at Remus, down into P8 with Sam Holman coming out of the pits, but he's a lap down the field. Meanwhile, in the GT3 class, it's the case that right now Tristan Dina-Brega currently leading the GT3s overall, the GT3 AM leader here, and he's got Lucas Romano tucked in behind him, and behind him they've got Sean Scudder in P3 of the GT3s as they make the way up towards turn number 2. Then we've got Jeremy DeBover there following through it, followed by Dirk Bounce, and then Dirk Bounce under a lot of pressure right now from what is Didi Belangley behind him as they make the way up towards Remus corner, going charge on through. But you can see how the top 4 in the GT3s are trying to break away from the rest of the GT3 pack as they come on up in towards Remus curve. But a little bit further back there, you can see Gareth Mills looking to defend versus what is a potential attack from Lambert Wedder, but he's actually gone up the inside there of Elwin Sykes, who's overcooked it into the corner. I think that's Elwin Sykes. No, that's Arjen Kregel, in fact, who's overcooked it into turn number 2, gone a bit deep, and as they make the way down towards turn number 3, well, Mills has had to give Kregel the space. They're side by side here, coming down to the braking zone. It's Porsche on the inside. Oh, goodness me, a bit of a tap there, and I think Kregel just turned in a little bit prematurely, and I think Mills will argue, well, he had his nose down. I think Kregel would argue, well, Mills shouldn't have put his nose in a place where it didn't belong. But both of them have settled it down. Mills has gained the place. I think Kregel might have lifted off there, thinking that perhaps he was a little bit more at fault as they make the way out of 5 and down towards 6. But they carry on racing there. Both of them a little bit damaged to the car, a little bit of a wounding to the machine. But meanwhile, a bit further back here, we see James Slates, who's having a hunt after Liam Tack right now after what has been a difficult start for the RP Motorsport Pro Am driver. And even further back, we do have here Elwin Sykes after a difficult start to the proceedings. That's Mark Arrowsmith just in front of him as they come roaring on through and down towards turn number 8. Now as they make the way into this braking zone here, you can see it's the case that Aerosmith, who started at the right at the back of the field, has gained already 4 places since the start. He rolls on as they make the way out to the final corner. That's 4 places overall, 3 in class, and they make the way now down towards turn number 1 once again with 3 minutes complete, still another 12 to go, plus the final lap. We look from them up towards Jim Stanton, who's in a pursuit in the LMP2 class right now after Paul Walton and Stephan Wessels has broken away to an extent as we ride on board here with Jim Stanton running in that P3 position. And we see parked up off the road, that's Chris Keenan, who's turned in at where's the Red Bull Statue Complex there through 5 into 6. He's parked on the grass, but Stanton right now pressing on. And well, for Stanton here as he falls a little bit further back, we're hearing that Jonathan Collins has had an off a bit further back. You can see how Stanton having a bit of difficulty there running in the dirty air of Paul Walton's LMP2 machine. They'll be running in the Dallara P217, of course, and these cars very sensitive to their downforce, and when they pick up the dirty air, you can see Stanton falling back here, where he's just simply not comfortable running in the dirty air off the back of Paul Walton's machine as they come through to go on to another lap. Meanwhile, looking from them to a bit further down the order, and Liam Tack here getting a little bit feisty, battling with Arjen Kregel for what is P5 in the GT3 AM class as they make the way on through turn number 6 and up towards 7. He goes a little bit deep into 7, however, carrying too much momentum through the apex of 6 and understeering. And as they make the way over the ridge and down in towards turn number 8 here, it is the case that right now Liam Tack, well, I think he's got to think about just settling down a little bit and going on the offensive. We know he's got a growing amount of pace in that Ferrari 488. He's just simply got to keep it together, and I think he will as time goes on here as he makes his way to another lap. But as he heads down, we can see behind him, that's James States giving him a little flash of lights. They're trying to get in his head as they make the way on through. But right now, Tack just keeping his nerve as they make the way through turn number 1 and head up towards turn number 2. Now as they come on through, we're hearing that Mark Baker's had a major moment out on the circuit. In fact, Mark Baker has jumped to the pit. So Mark Baker there with a mistake, and I think the car's got some issues as a result of it. So he's going to be feeling the pinch of that. But right now, Liam Tack staying safe. Meanwhile, you can see Jack Wyborn here for MRC team, and look who's immediately behind him and trying to recover a race, which was looking very good until the second corner, and that is Richard Stanton here taking a peek up the inside into 8 there to get out the dirty air and give himself some turning into turn 8 as they make the way down into A1 corner, turn number 9. You can see Wyborn under pressure here as they make the way on through. Now as they come across that timeline, will Wyborn go into the middle road? He does indeed, just to cut the toe briefly, and you can see how meanwhile it's going to be a potential move here up into the corner, and Stanton's going to go for it. That's very, oh goodness me, and it's a tiny tap, and it's the case that Wyborn is sent over, and he rolls back up the right way. But that, I dare say, was an accident that was not expected to happen at all, and you could see there how Stanton was not going to back out once he pulled out. But I think in the end it was the case. It came from quite far back. He dared to dream it, to be fair, and he's carried on a bit as Richard Stanton. I think there might be words after the race, but oh goodness me, the stewards are going to have to take a look at that one surely. And Richard Stanton right now, where he's not pulling any punches, he makes his way down towards turn number 3. As he makes his way on down, we do look from the LMP2 class to what is our GT3s once again. And speaking of pulling no punches, well, James States will be right on board here with the Audi R8 driver. A new camera angle for this round onwards, and as they make the way out to turn 1 and head up towards turn 2, you're riding on board with the driver looking over his right shoulder here. Gives you a real sense of what he sees as he makes his way up the hill. He's looking for that potential move versus James Slates. As he goes into versus what is, my apologies, we're on board with James States looking for that move versus Liam Tack. He can't quite find it, he just hasn't got the overspeed. Plus, Liam Tack very bold on the brakes in that Ferrari. Feels very comfortable braking deeper than the Audi driver as they make the way down towards turn number 3. And as they come on down here, it is the case that both drivers looking to outbrake one another, but Slate's backing off there. 9 is not really a place to go. He's going to try and lull the TGC driver into a mistake potentially as they come on out, but no mistake there from Liam Tack. He's doing very well to keep his head down and just simply keep putting in the laps as they make the way through turn number 5 here. And of course, James Slate's quite an experienced driver in terms of knowing where to battle, knowing where to overtake, does love close racing, versus Liam Tack, who you could argue is perhaps the less experienced driver of the two. Oh, goodness me. And Chris Keenan there taking a spin at turn number 7, but just out the way in time. But right now, Liam Tack really holding his own versus Slate, so they make the way down into turn number 8. And as we look to the exterior cameras once again, we have to tell the story of the GT3 Pros as well. And it is the case that Dirt Bounce right now, after what was a relatively slow start, we saw Jeremy de Boever really disappear and hold on to the back of Lucas Romano. Well, now it's the case that Jeremy de Boever has actually fallen backwards towards Dirt Bounce. DDD blaming, and also there, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, well, no, that is in fact the three of them as they make the way up the hill, and a bit further back is Peter Lemkins. He's 2.7 seconds back, and he's tucked in behind Navarro de Boever. So in fact, Peter Lemkins is behind the AM de Boever member of the family, not the pro driver. And as they make the way down towards turn number 3 here, well, Jeremy de Boever, he said he wanted to achieve a podium here in both races, and right now this P2 would deliver on that expectation as he makes his way down to the corner, and we see there Dirt Bounce looking for a little bit of a lunge up the inside there. I think it's the case that Bounce may have actually missed his braking point and decide to release the brakes and pull the car to the inside to give himself a longer braking distance in order to stop the car before clattering into the back of Jeremy de Boever, which you can do. So remember, when you point the car in towards the apex from an outside to inside line, you're essentially extending the braking zone. But as he makes his way round through turn number 6 and up into 7, it is the case that right now Dirt Bounce really trying to get a move on Jeremy de Boever, and he needs to be fair because de Boever's teammates right behind him in the form, and then a change by DB1 driver DDD Belaming. And as they make the way through turn number 8, you can imagine they would love to get 2 cars on the podium, but will Dirt Bounce be the fly in the ointment that says no, you don't achieve that here in the sprint? As they make the way up, but DDD Belaming here looking very fast as they make the way up the hill. We ride on board here with Belaming. He's looking for that potential move. He pulls the inside into turn 1. He doesn't dare go for it though. He knows how tricky it is to make a move up the inside into turn 1. It's a very tight apex, and then when you go for the move, you've got to be fully alongside. Otherwise, it can only end in tears. And speaking of tears, I'm hearing that Navarro de Boever's had a major moment on circuit that's dropped him all the way down at P7 in class, where he's tucked in behind James Slates. He makes his way out of turn number 1. You see Paul Walton coming through there. The LMP2 traffic has now caught up, and meanwhile, Slates battling. Well, I believe that's James Slates battling here with Liam Tack as they make the way up into turn 2. Slates on the inside. That's going to be Tack on the outside. They go side by side into the corner, and it's the same for Navarro de Boever versus Mark Arrowsmith, and de Boever there getting the shoulder out and giving Arrowsmith a little bit of a push off the road, as we see a little bit further off in the distance. Oh, goodness me, we've got a slight connectivity issue there. That will be fixed very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not sure what's happened there, other than all our timing screens have gone blank and now they're back. But it is the case that we saw Paul Walton very briefly decide to take a bit of a rallycross line, I think trying to avoid contact with James Slates and also Liam Tack. But in the process, you can see how the LMP2's now to siphon their way on through, and will Jim Stanton now under a huge amount of pressure. What is Baz Meacham behind in the battle for P3 in the LMP2 class as they make the way through turn number 6 and head up towards 7 and 8 in very short order. But Stanton looks to come on through down the inside line here past what will be, that will be both Slates and Tack, and you can see Baz Meacham also trying to come through as well. That's going to lock Slates to the inside as they roll on through turn number 8. As they make the way out of the corner, now they head down through 9 and on towards another lap here, less than 5 minutes to go. You can see in the rear of the picture there, that was the case. Well, I think Slate's getting a mouthful of what was the rear end of Liam Tack's Ferrari. Both drivers there really giving no quarter. You can see Navarro de Boever has closed up to them very rapidly as they make the way into turn number 1 as they roll on through. All 3 of them nose to tail together, and well, I think Navarro de Boever here is going to be looking for the move in the run up towards Remus Corner. As you can see, it's going to be the case that Liam Tack pulls the car to the inside. Slates follows him in the draft, and now Liam Tack goes back to the outside. Navarro de Boever on the outside there. They make the way into the braking zone, and Navarro de Boever is going to try and go round the outside here, but he gets the cold shoulder from Slates, which Slates is entitled to do. He's entitled to squeeze de Boever as long as he gives him enough space to have 2 wheels on circuit and he'll be qualified on track. And as they make the way down towards turn number 3, it is the case Navarro de Boever now tries to come back with the momentum. That Ferrari so strong in the draft, but you can see that Slates has gone deep to try and hold the position, but in doing so he's really gone deep into the corner, and now Navarro de Boever will have the inside through 4 and up into 5. Will it be the case that Slates holding the inside? Well, it's going to be difficult going around the outside for de Boever. He's got to find the grip there. He does find it, and James Slates backs out in the end, and Navarro de Boever, after having to really work for the move, makes his way up into P5, but for how long will it be? In fact, it's not going to be for long before he's up into P4 with Liam Tack. They're going very slowly, going through 6, 7, and now James Slate's looking to the inside here, but the TGC Racing drivers letting one go, but not the other here. It's the case that Tack may be a little bit slow coming out the corner, but he's not that slow as he makes his way. He's gone a bit wide there out of turn number 8, and I think that might be a track limit slowdown that's coming into effect very shortly, as you see James Slate's going on the inside and Mark Arrowsmith just watching behind them thinking, how do I get involved with these two? As we see Liam Tack and James Slates both battling side by side up into turn 1 once again, and this time Slates gets the move done, but he gets a little bit snap oversteer on exit, and now Mark Arrowsmith is going to make this 3 wide, and behind them that's Kurt Van Hoenacker who watches on as they go 3 wide up towards Rebus curve here. It's Arrowsmith on the outside, Tack on the inside, and in between Slates who's backed out and cut himself to the inside here, looking for that potential move, but Arrowsmith's going to do one in the form of Slates. Now will he get the pair? Oh, I don't think so. Is he actually, oh goodness me, is that a disconnect for Arrowsmith? Literally coming out the corner. No, he's reconnected. My goodness, internet connectivity for few drivers going a little bit wrong, and as they make their way on down, it is the case as they make their way down in towards turn number 3. They're still battling. That's Arrowsmith now at the inside of Liam Tack as they make their way out of the corner, and Arrowsmith finally gets it done as then Jonathan Collins comes on through there, and now we've got Kurt Van Hoenacker who wants a piece of the action here as they make their way into turn number 5, and Van Hoenacker tries to go around the outside, but he hasn't got the leverage to do it. But meanwhile, I have just been informed it is the case. There's been a major incident in what is the GT3 Pro class, and Jeremy de Boever now all the way down in at P6. Unfortunately, we can't quite bring you a replay right now, but it is the case that he has had to come into the pit lane, and I'm not exactly sure what exactly's happened there. We will take a look back post-race to find out, but it's an incident involving Dirt Bounce, DDD Blaming, and Jeremy de Boever. We will let you know about that one once the race concludes, but he's down in P6, which really has released Lucas Romano here, who's tucked in behind Tristan Dino Brega, and well, the RP Motorsport Prime driver here, the 2 leaders of the GT3 driver classes, just running nose to tail. The thing is, of course, you'd expect the Pro to be ahead of the AM. Well, it's the case, the AM is ahead of the Pro, and well, does this bring you back any ringing bells, ladies and gentlemen, with regards to Season 2 of the GT3 Championship, particularly in Lobby 2, the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing Lobby, which saw what was Stephan Wessels at the time putting in those absolutely flying performances in the GT3 AM class. We're seeing history being remade here again as they make their way out to turn number 5 and down towards 6. But as they come through, we do look up to the LMP2 class, and we can see it is the case that the Racing Team Astra Blue driver Stephan Wessels here, the South African, on a flying lap as he makes his way across that timeline. One more lap to go here for the South African. He goes onto the final lap. The white flag is now out. What about Paul Walton, who's being cheered on there by Mark Grant in the Facebook chat, saying come on Paul Walton, waving the Scottish flag there. And it is the case that the RD Simsport driver 3.1 seconds back and not able to close up at the moment. The lap times between the two of them near identical lap after lap, but Wessels has just had the better start and been able to get the power down a little bit earlier. As they make their way on through and up into turn number 2, we see Jim Stanton a little bit further back here in P3 and holding off Baz Meacham for the time being, 1.5 seconds between the two of them, but I think potential overtakes now are a little bit of a distant memory in the LMP2 class on this final lap. But in talking about battles that are potentially on the path to occurring in the near future, I can tell you that right now we do have what is Davide Favo looking to try and close down what is Elwyn Sykes there right towards the end of the Racing Team Astra orange drives, but I don't think they'll swap places given the fact that they'll want to avoid instances. We're hearing that James Slate stand off and actually come into the pit lane, so he will be qualified for the purposes of the reverse grid. It's gone very wrong for James Slate. And what about Lamont Wedder? Meanwhile, here you ask, well, he's currently chasing after what is the combination of Laming and Dirt Bounce, but meanwhile we must cut from them to our leader overall, because he comes down out of the penultimate corner and into the final one. He's continued the season where he left off at Daytona with that form, and Stephan Wessels is your winner in the LMP2 AM class here in the sprint race at the Red Bull Ring of the IMB Raceway Lobby, ahead of Paul Walton by 3 seconds at the end. This rivalry gets in fiercer by the moment, and it is Jim Stanton who completes your LMP2 podium, finishing P3 ahead of Baz Meacham. But as they make their way to the line, we're going to see in the GT3 classes the winners in the Pro and Am class. They're literally nose to tail. It'll be Lucas Romano from Belgium for RP Motorsport Prime, who takes the win in the BMW M4 for the GT3 Pros, ahead of the GT3 AM winner of Tristan Dino Brega here for Racing Team Astra Blue. These two on another level of pace, and there will be Dirt Bounce and a very heavily crumpled Mercedes who comes home in, well, what is, oh, Peter Lemkin's already crossed the line, apologies. Peter Lemkin's in P2 in the Pro class, Dirt Bounce in P3 in the end ahead of DDD Belaming, and it's going to be Arjan Kregel who comes on home in a rather quiet race. He's snuck under the radar, but he comes home P2 in the GT3 AM class for Team Racing Netherlands, ahead of Navarro de Boever here. And Navarro de Boever had to make a recovery drive. He's recovered to the podium from a change by DB2, but my goodness, it's the case that right towards the end we saw a number of drivers swap place and drop down the order, and it hasn't quite worked out for all of our drivers. But Mark Arrowsmith as well, it has to be said, started at the very back of the grid, P4 in the GT3 AM class come the checkered flag. Keep an eye on him in race number 2. I'm sure there's going to be some fantastic performances from him once again. As all our drivers coming through right now, one driver who will know it's been a major missed opportunity, Jeremy de Boever, who, having an instant which we'll take a look back at very shortly, was on course for a podium, in the end at P6. Well, let's find out what exactly happened. Well, it was the case, and this was only moments ago as they were making their way up into what was turn number 2 here. Oh my goodness, and they came across the circuit, and that was Dirtbouts Diddy Lane battling for position, and Jeremy de Boever just a bystander in that incident, and that, my goodness, well, that was a major incident which I don't think anybody wanted to see happen, and Dirtbouts in the end, and DDD Verlaming, well, I think Verlaming in particular is going to be a bit cross, not in the fact he's just involved in that incident, but also his teammate was taken with it in the end, and the two teammates lost out dearly because of that. But that is, ladies and gentlemen, of race number 1, and well, we'll have to get set for race number 2 in the near future and wait to see how that does play out. We'll be back in approximately 10 minutes time for the build up to race number 2. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss it. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the build-up to the feature race, which will kick off in approximately 5 minutes' time. And well, my goodness, what a sprint race that we've just had from Lobby 2 in the IMB Raceware lobby. Of course, this lobby sponsored by the Premier Sim and Real World Racing fashion wear and indeed racing wear provider. Whether you're looking for a team shirt, a team jacket, all the way down to personalised sim racing shoes or real world racing shoes and gloves, it is the case that IMB Raceware have got something for you, and it is of course clothing which is designed for you, by you, with the ultimate customisation available. Not available anywhere else on your typical off-the-shelf sim racing or certainly real-world racing products. Do check out imbRaceware.com today if you want to know more about it. But meanwhile, our drivers are currently racing and getting ready to go racing once again in what is this practice session before the feature. It is the case. Well, we saw Stephan Wessels take what was a quite significant win over Paul Walton in by 3 seconds, albeit you can imagine now with Paul Walton starting slightly ahead of him in the reverse grid, Walton will be looking to come back at him very strong. Meanwhile, in what is the GT3 PRO class, the one driver who really had a solid drive, Lucas Romano, as he makes his way out the pit lane and ran the end with the GT3 and winner of Tristan Dino Brega. The two of them literally nose to tail throughout, but in the end it was Lucas Romano who jumped ahead of Dino Brega to take the overall GT3 win. You imagine both of these drivers will be looking to make it 2 out of 2, but they've got to find their way through the GT3 pack because they'll be starting right at the back of it. But one driver who will be looking to try and arrest what was a nightmare moan, and that was Jeremy Boever, of course. So that incident involving was dirt bouts of DDD blaming initially, but in the end the two of them came spinning off the circuit out of turn when the run-up towards turn number 2, and in the end collected Jeremy Boever with them. You imagine the Boever will not be best pleased with that, and now looking to get some major points here in the feature. But that, of course, is what the hour's all about. You have a lot more time, and if it does go wrong, you can always turn things around in and out. Less so when you've only got 15 minutes or less than 15 minutes by the time the incident happens in the sprint. Now, we do say hello in the YouTube chat there to Mark Sykes, who is managing on the NXTGEN Racing account there, and I can see a number of you saying hello to Mark, and I hope you're doing well, Mark, and I hope you had a good week. And well, we're just waiting to go racing now, as we also say hello once again to Darren Doherty there, who reckons that in terms of the GT3 AM class, he's putting his money on Liam Tack potentially taking home the win because he's doing some good driving. Indeed, it should be praised. Liam Tack putting in a very good performance, battling over the course of the racing. Albeit his livery there not quite loading in, it would seem. It's a bit of a white livery right now, but hopefully his livery will be fixed when we go into the race. Sometimes that does happen, just a slight technical issue, but hopefully it will step aside that issue in short order. But we are roughly now 2 minutes away from going racing here. They're just in the final practice warm-up session. And well, over the course of the hour, what have we got to watch out for? Well, the strategy is going to be very key on this one. Given the fact that this is a circuit, the Red Bull Ring, which is all about being smart in the draft, therefore, you want to try and capitalise on that draft to do a bit of fuel saving behind other cars, short shifting on the straights, using the tyre of the driver in front of you in order to be able to gain some straight line speed and not have to use as much fuel, but at the same time as well, lifting and coasting into these heavy braking zones, and indeed in some of these trail braking zones, such as turns 5 and 6, could be quite beneficial. We saw that in particular in the LMP Pro class in the Apex Racing Academy lobby earlier this week, where we heard about the emphasis on that fuel saving, but also another factor, track limits. Track limits around the Red Bull Ring are absolutely merciless. We saw a number of drivers having to come into the pits for what was drive-through penalties right at the end of the race in the final 10 to 5 minutes, and even a couple of drivers taking what was the equivalent time penalty after the race of breaching the track limits and picking up that instant point count right at the end, and that could be the downfall of any driver, whether it be Stephan Wessels or alternatively Peter Lemkins, for example. And to be fair, Peter Lemkins, an unsung hero of the race just gone in terms of the sprint race, making his way onto the podium, and we were wondering whether he'd be able to get himself back on the podium after a difficult 2 rounds of racing. Well, he is back and looking very strong right now. Not quite on the pace of Lucas Romano, but again, it does seem to be the case that if one of them does very well, the other does very well as well in terms of consistency and finds their way up the order. Now, can RP Motorsport Pro-Am get their drivers back on the podium again in the GT3 Pro class? Well, we're not too far away from finding out here. They'll be looking to do so, but of course they will have that fierce competition from a challenge by DB1. And indeed, it will be the case that DDD Blaming will be looking to try and come on through very strong with Icon. You might see him on our classification screen right now. In fact, he's actually in the pit lane, and now we get the transition over to the feature race, and the grid will start to be formed. Now, of course, we can't quite take you through the grid at this point in time for the simple reason that we do have that limitation. We can't give you that grid until all of our drivers line up and then we can go racing. But as all of our drivers form up here, what we can do for you is show you the blimp camera right now and show all of our drivers in their splendour as they are currently parked up and forming the grid, and whether they be all the way at the back in the GT3 class, alternatively towards the front in the LMP2 class. You can see Walton there sharing that position with what is Stephan Wessels. In fact, it's going to be Wessels behind them, given the odd number of LMP2 AM class drivers. So it will be Walton who lines up alongside there, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken. That is going to be one Jim Stanton. And, well, as they line up here, all waiting and ready to go racing, it's going to be the case that Walton will need to get a very good start versus Wessels. He will not want Wessels to get the jump on him going into turns 1 and 2. He did that in the previous one. The two of them had a very good battle up through the opening corners, but in the end, Wessels was able to get the advantage and break away. But the grid is set, and now we are getting ready for the racing once again. And as we do see all of our drivers gradually pull away, I do believe it's going to be Jonathan Collins who takes all of our drivers away. Indeed, as the grid is then updated, we then give you that order. So on the front row, it is Collins and Baker, followed by what is Sam Holman and Jack Wyborn, and then we do have Richard Stanton and Baz Meacham behind them, followed by Paul Walton and Jim Stanton, and then Stephan Wessels on his lonesome on the final row of the LMP2s. Then we do have at the head of the GT3 packet will be Liam Tack and James Slates, the two drivers coming together there on the front row and battling once again, most likely. Didi Blaming, Sean Scooter behind them, Gareth Mills and Mark Sykes. Then on the third row, the GT3s, Kurt Van Hoenacker and Jeremy de Boever on the fourth row, Elwin Sykes and Navarro de Boever on the fifth row. But we must cut away from them, ladies and gentlemen, because now it is for our LMP2 Pro class, AM class drivers to take us away for an hour's worth of racing here at the Red Bull Ring in race number 2. Lights out, away we go once again here as Mark Baker gets jumped on both sides immediately by Sam Holman on the inside. It's going to be Collins on the outside. How will the three go into the first corner unscathed? They all come on through, and Sam Holman there with a very bold move when the Baker actually gave more space to Holman than he could to Collins, and all Sam Holman, by dreaming to dare, is up into the lead of the LMP2 class after the first corner. Now can he hold on with Mark Baker coming back very strong as they make the way up into the braking zone for turn number 2. He's going defensive here, and I think Sam Holman's done it. I think it's the case. He's made it work, and well, my goodness, he's able to replicate what we saw from Robert de Sunik last season in terms of GT3. He's going into turn 1 on the opening lap. It's Sam Holman up into lead, but Mark Baker coming back again this time, going into turn 3. He's not able to do it on the brakes, but behind them we can see Stephan Wessels made a lot of ground very early on. Meanwhile, Paul Walton has not made as much ground. He's in P8 by comparison as they make the way out of turn number 3. Meanwhile, in the GT3 class, we can see Liam Tack still leading after the first couple of corners, but behind them it's going to be Kurt Van Hoenacker who sipes his way to the inside on the inside of Gareth Mills. They make the way on down. He takes will be P2 in the GT3 AM class here as they battle the way on through, and in fact Gareth Mills, they're going a little bit wide, a little bit gravel, and as a result loses some pace as they come on through. But a little further back you can see Mark Arrowsmith here on the inside of Mark Sykes. Sykes is going to try and hold the outside line here. The Audi very strong on that outside line to turn 5, but the tyre temperature's not quite there yet. You can see him starting to understeer. He's had to back it off slightly and therefore cede the position. Behind them, Elwin Sykes, they're losing the place too. I believe that is Peter Lemkins coming on through, but right now everybody making it for unscathed here. The only driver I think has had a in fact, Davide Favo has retired due to a technical issue from what I'm hearing as they all make their way down into turn number 8. That is Lucas Romano up the inside there of third bounce as they come out of 8 and into 9. So Lucas Romano trying to make an early start here and gain his way up the order. He'll want to go hunting after Jeremy de Boever, but of course his main rival in the championship at the moment for the lead of the GT3 Pros. But this opening lap, it's seen a little bit less drama compared to the previous one, but Mark Sykes there having to go a bit defensive into turn 1 versus what is Peter Lemkins as they make the way on out here. Oh, goodness me, we've got a car spun, and I'm wondering, is that, I think that's Lambert Weather there. Yep, Lambert Weather has been spun. Now, I'm not 100% sure whether it's the case that he's been actually in an instant where somebody's tapped him, or turns he's done it under his own volition, but it's gone very wrong. But meanwhile, it's 2 by 2, hurrah, hurrah, as they come out of turn 2 with the VR46, that's the Valentino Rossi 46 Ferrari of what is Mark Arrowsmith there, making his way up a position versus Gareth Mills. They all come charging down towards turn number 3. I'm hearing that Mark Baker has had an instant at turn number 6 in the LMP2 class, but we we stay here as Peter Lemkins goes up the inside of Gareth Mills here, changing for overall position, not class position, as the GT3 Pro comes past the GT3 AM driver. But Lemkins right now is charging. He's going after the win. There's no doubt about that. But a little bit further back, you can see Owen Sykes. They're going to try and keep GT3 Pro at base. He wants track position right now as they make the way on towards another lap very shortly. But as they come on through and make the way down towards turn number 6, we look up towards our leaders in the LMP2 AM class here. Oh, goodness me, and that's Paul Walton, who's had a spin. And, well, I'm not sure if he was caught in contact or what exactly's happened, but Walton has got it wrong at turn 1 and now has dropped down to P8 after he's making his way gradually up through the order. And, well, Wessels at this point will be looking at a timing screen and thinking, right, my main rival's a long way down the road, I've got to capitalise. And speaking of capitalising, we see that Jim Stanton moving up to P4. He's just got his way past Collins as they make the way down the back straight here towards turn number 3. As they come roaring on down, it's not even 5 minutes complete of this race yet, and already we have seen drama, we have seen changes in position like no other as they make the way on down. And Wessels right now pushing on here, looking for that P2 on Wyborn as Sam Holman's 1.5 seconds up the road. And of course Wessels will want to clear Wyborn before Holman can make it a considerable gap, because otherwise then Wessels has to start to push the car a little bit harder and potentially risk compromising his strategy. And Wessels here coming out of turn 7, he's got the better run, he looks up the inside here. I don't think Wyborn's going to fight this one too hard. Wyborn on the outside, Wessels on the inside into turn number 8, and under braking in, both drivers trail braking in. Wessels has to take a tighter line, he'll lose a bit of momentum on exit, but I think he's got enough coming through turn number 9 here, and Wessels up into P2, and it's the case Wyborn down to P3, but a bit further back Baz Meacham here making his way on in P6, and the BRM driver are trying to chase after Jonathan Collins as they make the way onto what for them is lap number 4 as they come across the timing line. But as they do, I can tell you that right now in the GT3 AM class it couldn't be closer, because here is your GT3 AM leader. He found his way past Liam Tack, and now Kurt Van Hoenacker and the change by DB2 driver under pressure, but Liam Tack getting it very wrong and really struggling with that transition from 6 to 7 as they make the way out towards turn number 8. And it's the case, the Boever up his inside and says thank you very much, don't mind if I do, as he rolls them through, but he takes a bit too much apex curve there, and the Boever literally sideways coming out of the corner, just about keeps it together. But the change by DB2 driver's got to know that it's only 5 minutes into the race, he's still got 55 minutes to go. He does not need to push overly hard at this time to win. The win will come if he works it gradually as he makes his way through turn number 1 once more, and as he makes his way up towards turn number 2. I'm having it confirmed in my ear with regards to Davide Favo, ladies and gentlemen. There's issues with the car which have meant it's not been able to take to the grid, and as they are working in the garage to get the car fixed. Meanwhile, it's the case that Novoda over here having to go up the inside of Kurt Van Hoenacker, but of course the two teammates here, they will battle, and Novoda has oversold it into turn 2, and as a result Kurt Van Hoenacker comes back, and Liam Tack there with Mark Arrowsmith. The two of them come together. Well, I do wonder with regards to that whether a bit more space could have been given by Tack on Arrowsmith. It did look as though Arrowsmith had nowhere to go than off the road, but both in the end are waiting to turn the car around, and well, that is not a happy instant for the pair of them as they make the way back up to speed. But as they do, I think Tack is going to back it off, and they're both very heavily damaged. But meanwhile, they'll be coming into the pits for what is a little bit of repair work, and you can see here it is the case that Gareth Mills is pressing on in P5 all the same, and he's gained a couple of positions because of that incident. But meanwhile, having not found his way past his teammate through what was turn number 2, right now it's the case that Kurt Van Hoenacker has that pressure on the road over coming down into turn number 8 as they run forward. Of course, a major opportunity here in this feature race for McChange by DB2 to pick up huge points in the team standings, and as they make the way out of turn number 9 and head on to another lap, you'd imagine that very shortly they may do the swap, and it may be up into turn number 2 if it's going to happen as a swap rather than a pass. But as they head on through right now, no signs of the change. But I can tell you one thing, whilst all this is happening, Sam Holman trying to run away from Stephan Wessels in the lead of the LMP2 class, and Wessels is closing gradually. Meanwhile, it's the case that Stanton, well, he's on the back of Wyborn right now. We ride on board the gearbox of Wyborn as they make the way out of the A1 corner of turn number 9, and as they do, you see the gravel being kicked up there, and Wyborn, he's under a lot of pressure, and Stanton's going to say, don't mind if I do, I'm going to take the inside, but Wyborn tries to squeeze into the middle of the road, and as they make the way into turn number 1 here, well, Stanton's going to go win. It's happened before, and the two came together, and now as they make the way out of the corner this time, Stanton backs out of it, knowing no, it's not going to be the case that Wyborn's going to be rolling over again as they make the way up towards turn number 2, and in doing so now Jonathan Collins will look for an opportunity here up into Remus, but he can't quite find it as he makes his way up into the braking zone instead. He waits and lies in wait, and now he's going to look for the run down in towards turn number 3. Our drivers here being quite patient this time as they make the way down towards 3.9. There's a lot more at stake here over the course of the hour, and Liam Tack has come into the pits, I should point out, ladies and gentlemen, for that fast repair. as they make the way out, and indeed Liam Tatt leaves the pit lane in very short order. We can see Collins here losing that momentum off the back of Stanton and just getting a bit wrong coming out of 3. Meanwhile, Meacham closing up behind Baz Meacham, the Welshman, who really on his return to the series right now trying to get some huge points on the board as he presses on. And Mark Harrismith has just left the pit lane as well with the fast repair to the car, and as they roll them through turns 5 and 6 right now, Meacham trying to get back into this fight. As meanwhile, in the battle for the GT3 AM lead, the Boever goes to the move up into turn 1. It's probably one of the worst places to do it, for the simple reason you lose so much momentum on that inside line. Harrismith comes out the pits a lap down as they go charging up the straight here, and you can see the top 4 of the GT3 AMs. That's Mark Sykes, the rear of the picture, who's just come out of the picture, but the Boever here with Witzkurt, Van Hoenacker tucked in behind. You can see Van Hoenacker there lifting off really early into the braking zone, 75-metre lift, and he needs to do that 8 to save if you want also B to avoid tap in the back of his teammate under braking. And as they make the way down, that is the top 4 in your picture, with Peter Lemkins right in the foreground as he passes them through. But that's the top 4 of your GT3 AM class, literally nose to tail as they head down into the braking zone for turn 3. You see Jack Slater here goes a little bit deep, and in doing so, in that draft of the 2 cars in front of him, is affording Mark Sykes an opportunity to get ever closer as they roll them through 4 and up into 5. Now as they make the way through here, we ride on board with Mark Sykes, who really trying to find another opportunity to get onto the podium here. He's got a lot of pace in that Audi. It's just not quite worked out a couple of recent rounds, but as he rolls his way on through turn number 6, you can see there how it is the case. At the front, in the foreground, the lead Audi of Van Hoenacker literally coming out sideways out of 6, almost losing the rear of the car there. That's how hard he's pushing to keep Slates and Sykes at bay as they roll them through turn number 8 here. And just give you a sense, you can see how all 3 Audi drivers, all in the same car, all the same setup, but all with their own unique lines around it, albeit all very similar going through turn number 9 to be fair. But as they come towards the end of the lap right now, the question will be, is any one of them going to start fuel saving or thinking about preserving the car for later? I don't think so at this time. I think they're all focusing on just keeping it together, although you can see that Slates goes a bit deep, but Sykes takes a lot of sausage curb in return. That unsettles the car slightly in the long run up towards turn number 2, and Slates will have the advantage here of being in the draft of what is their Van Hoenacker as they make the way up into the hill. Will he look for it, Sykes? He thinks about it, but no, he decides just to get close under braking. He could almost reach out the window and tap the rear of James Slate's car. Although, be fair, if this was Formula 1, he'd get a £50,000 fine for it, although we don't do that here in Next Gen Racing. And as they make the way down, no change at the moment between these drivers. He's going to have to wait his turn. But meanwhile, speaking of waiting turns and whatnot, I can tell you that it is the case. Siphoning their way through the GT3 traffic now are the LMP2s, and they're going to have to wait their turn on certain corners. And you can see Wyborn wants to get it done very quickly as Romano sees in his rear view mirror what is Wyborn coming on through and opens the steering wheel there, but that was near close. And as they make their way in towards turn number 5, well, Wyborn's simply going to say, right, I'm coming on through whether you like it or not, whereas Stanton has to back out there. He goes up the inside of 1 but not 2, and that is Dirk Bounce and Tristan Nina-Rega as they make their way through turn number 6, having to deal with the fast charging LMPs coming on through as they make the way round and down towards turn number 8 in very short order. Meanwhile, Paul Walton, the man on a mission here to recover after what was a very difficult opening few laps, and as the RD Simsport driver here literally closes up to the back and sniffs the back of Baz Meacham, it is the case that right now, sitting there, you can see Jonathan Collins also coming through, and this is what multi-class racing does. It creates these situations where all of a sudden the faster class, the drivers are all tucked together, and Walton's going to go for it here into turn 1, and they clear the GT3 driver, Meacham on the outside, Walton on the inside, and Walton clears him under braking, and Walton carries a huge amount of momentum through the corner. My goodness! Well, it's the case. He's now turn 1, and he's just leaving Meacham in the dust there. He's not going to gain the towards Meacham in the slipstream run up towards turn number 2. And as they come up into the corner here, it is the case that I think that move is all said and done. But speaking of things being said and done, it's not said and done for Kurt Van Hoenacker right now, who finds himself in a bit of an argy-bargy with James Slates and Mark Sykes here. As it's the top 4, as you see, siphoned his way on through. That's Paul Walton just literally cutting his way through there. And as they make the way into turn number 3, oh, goodness me, Van Hoenacker then literally on the back out of the last possible moment. So as he would have tapped his teammate, Navarro de moment. Now Baz Meacham finds himself in a situation where he's being boxed in behind the GT3s, and this is very difficult for them to negotiate, because on the straights, the LMPs can blast past in the corners. Well, they can blast past, but it's the case that the GT3s want to take the racing lines. They're having their own race, of course, and they're entitled to do so. It's the LMPs who have to find a safe way past as they make the way up towards turn number 8 once again. But Collins right now all over the back of Meacham. He looks up into turn 8. He can't quite find it, but as they make the way through the corner, until you Kurt Van Hoenacker is literally having to pull out every stop in order to keep James Slates behind him. Whatever it is, James Slates is like a bull to a matador versus Kurt Van Hoenacker, because as they come out of turn number 9, they make the way up towards turn 1. It's Slates on the inside, Van Hoenacker on the outside here. I think Slates is going to have to run under braking, and Van Hoenacker decides, you know what, I'll back out and take the run back up towards Remus at 2. But meanwhile, Mark Sykes just watches on here in the popcorn seat view as they come up in towards turn 2. It's the long run. But right now, all this squabbling will do is give Navarro de Boever the opportunity to run away. He's 2.3 seconds up the road. You can see him in the foreground there in the Ferrari. And right now, Van Hoenacker looks up the inside. He gets James Slates to go deep. He was never going to make the move from that far back, but he intimidated a move. And he's got Van Hoenacker. Well, Van Hoenacker has now got a run here down towards 3. Can he capitalise? As you see, Mark Sykes there looking up the inside, but he's not close enough to make it 3 wide. Meanwhile, Van Hoenacker backs out on the inside line in the rear of your picture. That's Tristan Dino Brega, and Dirt Bounce changes overall GT3 positions with the fact that Dirt Bounce is a pro versus Dino Brega being one of the AM drivers. But my goodness, it is all gloves are off fighting here, and we're not even a quarter of the way into this race as they all come on through. But as they make the way down and around through the middle of the circuit right now through the Red Bull Statue Arena, it is the case that as we look from them to a bit further down the order, I can tell you that right now Lambert Wedder, last of our GT3 pros, not really making too much ground at the moment, and neither is Lucas Romano. Romano really looks to be struggling here coming through the traffic, and when I say traffic, he is racing with our GT3 drivers. It's not as they don't deserve to be on the lead lap with him or anything along those lines, but it seems like he's having difficulty in finding his way up the order. I think it's because he's caught in the big slipstream pack, and therefore he's just not got the opportunities coming through. And I think it's the same for Tristan Dino Brega, to be fair. He's caught between a rock and a hard place in the fact that he would love to gain more time, but he's tucked in behind Dirt Bounce right now, and that Mercedes is no slouch on the straights, particularly after it's come out corner exit. Once it gets into third and fourth gear, it just starts to power up through the gearbox, and that is where the Mercedes works very well, is in terms of straight line acceleration and its top speed. As they make the way right now into turn number 2, I think our 2 winners in the GT3 driver classes for the sprint race have got to be patient here and think about where they can deploy strategy. Now, in terms of strategy, where we would expect those potential strategic moments to occur, or those potential undercuts, we saw some drivers in the Apex Racing Academy lobby earlier in the week hit as early as 17 minutes into the race, and therefore it is possible. In particular, we saw Nigel Stock, who pulled off that brilliant drive in the GT3 AM class in that lobby. It was the case that he pitted around the 20-minute mark and managed to undercut a huge chunk of his respective battle in field. And well, could anybody pull that off today? We will wait and see with bated breath. But Jim Stanton right now chasing after Paul Walton, but Paul Walton, to be fair, quite a way up the road as they make the way out to turn 1 and head up towards turn number 2. And Walton here, well, he's got past a number of drivers once again, and now he's going after Jack Wyborn, looking for that opportunity. But whilst all this has been happening, I should tell you that Sam Holman and Stephan Wessels have traded places for lead, as we see Jack Wyborn go deep into 2, and Walton's going to be up into P3 in short order. And now it's a 3-second gap to Sam Holman up the road as he makes his way down towards turn number 3. Yes, indeed, Wessels and Sam Holman have changed places off camera. Unfortunately, we didn't quite catch that overtake, but Wessels is now leading the Racing Team Astra Blue driver here. He will want to make it 2 wins out of 2 and get some huge points on the board here. It'll be a big statement as we head into continental Europe. But as he makes his way around right now, I can tell you that from him to Chris Keenan, well, Keenan's found his way past Gareth Mills, and I believe that's because Gareth Mills has had the mother of all moments at turn number 1 as they make the way on down. And as they do, it's the case of also here in that, well, we've got Mark Arrowsmith, who I believe has retired from this race due to the damage picked up earlier in the race, which is very unfortunate. And Elwyn Sykes as well with a technical issue and a retirement by looks of things, or at least the car's in the garage. They're trying to get it fixed from what I'm hearing. But right now, a number of drivers really experiencing issues at this time, as we do see Tristan Dino Brega here chasing after what is Dirt Bounce. But again, the slipstream pack of the GT3s, nobody's really gaining too much now. And of course, the leader at the pack is not breaking away as they now enter into what is the second quarter of this race. We're now almost 17 minutes in. We've still got 43 minutes to go, and we're waiting to see how the strategies play out in short order. As our drivers continue on the way through here, it is the case that we can see Tristan Dino Brega just waiting patiently, thinking out when he can go on that offensive as he rolls them down towards turn number 1 once again. Mark Sykes as well. But to be fair, one of the nice things is, if you're Mark Sykes here at this situation, you can look to the drivers in front, set your pace to them if you're able to match their pace comfortably, and then think about simply fuel saving behind them and protecting the car, and that may shorten your pit time enable you to undercut that field later on. And I think for Sykes, he's got to worry about the fact he's got Adrian Gregory 2.5 seconds back, who has his teammate Lambert Wedder in front of him and between the two of them. But you can imagine that if Wedder gets close enough to Sykes, he'll look to make a pass on Sykes and look to cost Sykes some time in the process. So that'll bring Kregel into play, and the Team Racing Netherlands driver would really appreciate that. After a great P2 in the sprint race, he'll be looking to try and make it 2 podiums out of 2 in this feature. Whilst he makes his way down towards turn number 3, I can tell you that it is the case that looking a little bit further out the order in the LMP class, it is Paul Walton, who's now all over the back of Sam Holman here as they make the way up towards turn number 2. And as they do, Walton's got a huge draft. He's going to be made to go around the outside. He's going to have the momentum, but will he have it on the brakes? Holman's not going to give it easily, and Holman locks up the front right brake. There he goes deep into the corner, and Walton cuts back on the inside in. Very well timed move there by Paul Walton, getting Sam Holman to overcommit to the corner on that inside line. It's P2 for Walton, and now he's got an 8.5 second gap to close down to Stephan Wessels. Wessels has wasted no time in trying to put a gap between himself and the rest of the LMP2 field, and you can definitely know why, because he knows that when Walton's got clear air now, we will see Walton absolutely fly as he makes his way through turn number 5. We will wait and see how rapidly he comes up through the order, but meanwhile Jim Stanton here chasing after Jack Wyborn for P4, Stanton in P5 of course, and as he rolls on through turn number 6 at this point, I think the privateer's just got to think about how he manages the pace on this one, given the fact that it has been a very tricky race so far. And well, they haven't got the GT3 traffic at the moment. They've cleared all the GT3 traffic. The Vessel sets an even faster LMP at 2 fastest lap of the race of a 19.364. Goodness me, Vessels is literally pulling it out lap after lap right now. But as they make the way to a line, we're hearing that Tristan Di Nobrega's come into the pit lane, and in fact emerging from the pit lane again here, the Racing Team Astra Blue driver. Well, this is a little bit of a surprise to the senses, and as he makes his way on out, well, if it's a pit stop, if it's a scheduled one, he's decided to go incredibly early. Now this gamble, will it pay off? That is the big question here. And in terms of other pit stops, well, he is the only driver ahead of him who's taken a pit stop already, but that was Chris Keenan from Team MRC. I think he's had to do repair work for the car. He's ahead of Tristan Di Nobrega, and the only driver to have also pitted who's up that high in the order. But otherwise, right now, Tristan Di Nobrega trying something different by the looks of things. We'll wait to see how that plays out in practice as they make the way down and around. Now, as they do, I can tell you that Mark Sykes, meanwhile, he has closed up a little bit to the back of what is there. Well, that is Lambert Wedder between them, and boy, he's lost a bit of time in the process of being passed by Lambert Wedder as he runs very wide out of the final corner to Sykes, and we can see that Adrian Kregel now inching ever closer, but he's not too far off the back of Van Hoornacker, Slates and de Boever, as we hear that Gareth Mills is into the pit, and that's going to be a second pit stop for Gareth Mills, and I think that's track limits, because he's literally just gone straight past his pit box. And I think that is a drive-through penalty for Gareth Mills, and that would explain the situation as they make the way up towards turn number 2 here. Adrian Kregel being the focus of our cameraman right now. You can see it is the case as he presses up here. We do have, well, that is Lambert Wedder coming through versus Kurt Van Hoornacker, and in doing so, Mark Sykes inches ever closer to the back of Van Hoornacker as they head on down and down towards what is turn number 3. Now, as they make the way down here, we can see, whoa, hold up a second, we're hearing that Richard Stanton's had a bit of a moment, and that's coming out the final corner, and well, Richard Stanton, who was running at the back of our LMP2 class, is not having a happy day here at the Red Bull Ring. I can tell you that, at least in this feature race, it is not going right for the Briton as he gets himself back up to speed. But we look back from him to Kurt Van Hoornacker here, who we ride on board the gearbox of, and he's under a huge amount of pressure right now from Mark Sykes. You see Stephan Wessels going through on the inside of Sykes and tries to give himself the space on the inside. What is Van Hoornacker? Van Hoornacker gives it gladly, but now we've got the battle for P3 in the GT3 AM class between Van Hoornacker, Sykes and Kregel as they make the way up into turn number 8 once again as they roll and you can see Kregel really close, and Van Hoornacker goes very deep and in the process peels into the pits there at the last possible moment. Well, that could have been a nightmare situation. Well, Mark Sykes then may have had his heart in his mouth, and Adrian Kregel's all over the back of his Van Hoornacker has called it late to come into the pit. And now Kregel's going to look up the inside into turn 1. This is a P3 on track in the GT3 AM class, and Sykes holds on for now. Kregel backs off there, and hold up a second. Walton is into the pit lane. Paul Walton is coming in as I look outside my commentary box window. And here's the case that right now Paul Walton decides to come in early, and in doing so, well, we'll have to wait and see whether that's going to play out to his advantage, as meanwhile Lambert Wedder there trying to go around the outside of dirt bounce into turn number 2. well, the Team Race Netherlands drivers got the momentum, and as they make the way down the back straight here towards turn number 3, well, Wedder's not giving this up here. It's going to be Lamborghini versus Mercedes. It's going to be an Audi 5.2 litre V10 versus a Mercedes V8 engine as they roll them through turn number 3. It is the case. They're still side by side. Wedder versus Bounce. These two, of course, great friends off circuit. Great racing respect being shown here. And as they make their way into turn number 5, well, Bounce finds himself on the outside line in that Mercedes front engine rear wheel drive. It's not going to have much rotation in the car, but he still holds on. Dirt Bounce there, making that Mercedes look very slick. Round turn number 5 and into 6-7 as he holds on, and as they roll on through right now, well, it definitely looks as though here Lambert Wedder's got his challenge set in the fact that Dirt Bounce is not giving this one up easily. Well, as they make the way through turn number 8 and into 9, will we see one of them peel into the pits? No, we do not, but what I can also tell you is that Tristan Dino Brega has found his way past Kurt Van Hoenacker for P6 in the GT3 AM class. This happened off camera, but we focus right now on Lambert Wedder chasing after Dirt Bounce here for P5 of the GT3 Pro class as they make the way onto another lap. Lambert Wedder, well, you'd have to say he's going to have to do it in the middle or the latter portion of the lap, because right now that Mercedes looking very bold and strong in the run on these straightaways. But as they make the way up, we do see Sam Holman here, P2 in what is the LMP2 AM class. He's coming on through, and we can see there Jim Stanton putting himself in behind the GT3s. There's a lock up there for Jack Wyburn, and a lot of our LMP drivers getting lockups into turn 2 on that front right. And as they make the way around and down towards turn number 3, it's going to be Wyburn versus Stanton. Stanton had a very bad run, but Stanton's going to use the fact he's on the inside, and on the inside of the GT3 cars to hold position. Smart play by Stanton there to give himself the place as we see some brake dust being kicked up from Sam Holman. I think that's brake smoke, in fact, where he's locked up into turn 3. The brakes locking up, and Baz Beecher there literally going to come on through. As meanwhile, Lambert Wedder and Dirt Bounce go battling again, and this time Bounce holds on through turn number 5 on the inside here. Well, I think Baz Beecher literally had to squeeze himself on the inside and just pray that neither of the GT3 drivers decide to tuck it close to what was the apex, because otherwise he would have been literally squeezed off the road as they make the way on through. But my goodness, that was very tight, and Bounce is holding on here for dear life for P5. And I imagine he's trying to do this because he wants it to play into his strategy. I think he's going to try and go long here and keep Wedder behind him as long as possible as they make the way on through. Now, meanwhile, coming into the pits as they make their way past the pit lane is Navarro de Boever, who's in. Meanwhile, James States has now taken the lead of the GT3 AM class here as he rolls the car on through. And as they make the way on around here, well, James States, I don't think it's going to be leading come the end of the pits, but we can see a little bit further up the road here, we do have battling side by side. That is Jim Stanton battling with Sam Holman for P2 and LMP class. And the two drivers come together. Oh, goodness me. And Jack Wyburn comes in very hot there. Now, I think, to be honest, that was a little bit close between Stanton and also what was Holman there. I think Stanton then literally said to Holman, you're going to have no space but that outside to deal with. And in the process of the two of them literally going side by side, I think Wyburn was not expecting them to literally take all the speed out of one another into the corner. And that's why the tap occurred. You can see he's lifted off there into turn 3. He knows that it's been a mistake by him to tap the back of Holman and send him spinning, but that was very near the knuckle racing. And well, we do love to see close racing, but I think there might be a word about that one, because right now Baz Beecham has gained as a result of what was a very elbows out move from Jim Stanton. To be fair, Stanton has every right to get his elbows out within limits, and I think he's pushed the limits as far as they can go there. But Jim Stanton up into P2 in terms of position out on track as Baz Beecham in, Vessels in as well. They're all into the pit, and they've decided, you know what, it's enough's enough. We've got to bring it in. Sam Holman comes in as well. Wyburn makes his way in. It's going to be all the LMP2 class cars coming in quick succession as they make the way into the pit lane. Mark Baker also coming in here, literally the top 7 all making their way on in, and as they come on through, it is the case that we look from them and what is a pit season to a little bit further down the order. In fact, there's Paul Walton. Well, what on earth has happened to Paul Walton? We haven't seen him. He's dropped all the way down the order. I suspect that Paul Walton's had some sort of incident a bit earlier on in the race. We will find out what happened to Paul Walton in due course, but right now he's having to literally clamber his way up the order. In fact, no, my apologies. It is the case he's already had a pit stop, and he made a pit stop early, so he's going for the undercut here to try and clear his way on through. Now he makes his way out, and as he does, he comes into turn number 1 here, and looking at very good. He's jumped the rest of his peers by a reasonable margin. There's Richard Stanton behind him, but Richard Stanton has yet to have a pit stop, and Stephan Wessels, meanwhile, is now only 7 seconds ahead. So Paul Walton, going for the early stop, has closed down that gap to Wessels by a further 1.5 seconds. The only question is, of course, for Paul Walton, will he now have to make a second stop or take a lot of time out of his race later in terms of preserving the car, saving fuel and saving tyres? We will wait and see. But the only driver in the LMP2s yet to pit is this man here, Richard Stanton, who's running in P3. And we would suspect after his pit stop we'll be dropping out somewhere around Mark Baker down in P8, P9. And as he comes out of turn number 4 and up into 5 here, it is now the case where all the pit stops are playing out, and therefore the field does open up to an extent. Although I say that, look who's leading the GT3 Pro class right now, and this has been a long time since we've last seen him up towards the front, and that is Sean Scooter here for Racing Team Astra Blue, who's currently leading the class ahead of Jeremy de Boever. Now, neither of them have pitted, so as a result, this is a track position battle right now rather than a strategic and track position battle. But as they make the way down towards turn number 3, it is the case the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, I think, is reveling in the fact that he's up front and will look in quite comfortable in this race after the disaster that was Daytona by comparison. I think he'll take the points he can get, but at the same time, he'll be enjoying this and feeling as though things are nicely going his way as he makes his way on out of what is turn number 3 in towards 4-5, and looking very composed right now is Scooter, as behind him Jeremy de Boever will look to try and capitalise as much as he can in terms of closing up to the back of Scooter and gaining some positional time, because remember, Bounce, Lemkins, Romano and Wedder have all pitted, and well, de Boever will want to jump as many of them as he can once he's come out the pits. As they make the way down towards turn number 8 here. For them is the 19th time of asking, will we see them peel into the bits? Scooter peels into the bits. Jeremy de Boever goes longer here, so he's deciding to go for the ultimate overcut. And to be fair, if he's got the fuel in the car to do it, and we do know the GT3 fuel tank does take them to around half distance this race, because remember, they start with limited fuel tanks. They don't start with the 400%, they start with about 75 to 80%. And as they make the way on around, it is the case that fuel, they can either preserve it or push it hard. But Jeremy de Boever right now is saying, I'm going to go longer than everybody else. And in doing so here, this could benefit him in the long run, because he'll have clear track. He will not have the challenge of coming out into potential GT3 AM traffic, GT3 Pro traffic, or the LMPs coming on through. And he does have behind him there, that is in P5. Oh no, not P5, my apologies. That is, I think, Richard Stanton behind him in P9 of the LMP2 class, and as he's trying to close up here, it is the case. Well, I think de Boever will be hoping that Stanton closes on him on a straight. But meanwhile, it is pit season for our GT3 AM drivers. There's Slates, there's Mark Sykes, there's also behind, I believe that is, unless I'm very much mistaken, tucked in behind him, that'll be the pit stop of, oh goodness me, that'll be Kurt Van Hoenacker in behind, and Van Hoenacker all the way down the order there in P9. And as they make the way on now, we can see Dirt Bounce. Well, it's the case Mark Sykes being released there, and he's battling in the pits with James Slates. It's going to be very close here, but Mark Sykes has jumped James Slates through the pit stops in the end, just about, the two of them so close together, and it's going to be a battle on the accelerator coming out the pit lane. And well, Mark Sykes will probably have his heart in his mouth right now, thinking, we've done it, we've got into P2, and now he's got to run with it as the two Audis get themselves back up to speed. Sykes, of course, coming off the limiter sooner, but right now, as they make the way up towards turn number 2, you can see Slates falling back a little bit. They're not having the best of exits out of the pit lane. It is a tricky pit lane to exit out, because there is a depression in the road as they leave. They've got to be careful about getting overs, wheel spin as they make the way out of the pits and potentially snap overs there. But Mark Sykes has got the jump on strategy, and now the question is, can he hold on? Because Navarro de Boever, by comparison, all the way up in the lead. He's 11.5 seconds away from the rest of the field right now. Navarro de Boever looking very strong here. Limit change by DB2 driver. He's looking to be in a world of his own. But speaking of a world of his own, will it be the case that Jeremy de Boever, who's in the pits, will be in a world of his own? He leaves the pit lane. Where's Sean Scooter? Here is the Racing Team Astra Blue driver coming out the final corner. This is going to be close. Jeremy de Boever is still on the limiter right now, but it's not going to be for too long. Scooter making his way out towards turn number 1. Jeremy de Boever's left the pit lane, and through strategy, doing the overcut, Jeremy de Boever is now your GT3 Pro leader. It is the case, he's been able to jump the rest of the GT3 Pro field by simply going long, and Sean Scooter now has the pressure of de Boever's teammate, and that is Didi Valami chasing after him here for P2. You see Scooter goes defensive into turn 2, and it's going, oh my goodness, and that is a bold move from Didi Valami. He just literally went round the outside as if it was the case he was literally on rails. Well, I've never seen in all my years of real world or sim racing somebody go round the outside at Remus Corner, where's the Red Bull Ring, as smoothly as that. Give that man a medal, because that is a contender for overtake of the season if I've ever seen one here. That was absolutely slick, and I think even Sean Scooter right now may be thinking, did time just slow down, because that Mercedes just literally went round the outside as slick as a whistle as they make the way out of 5 and up into 6. But as they do, with just under half the race to go, Scooter will be looking to come back here as they roll them through the corners. But you can see there also you've got Jonathan Collins making his way on through. And as Collins sipes his way through the GT3s at this point, of course, P6 in the LMP2 class, it is the case they all press on in continuation of this race, as we're hearing that unfortunately Tristan Dina Brega has had to jump to the pits due to what is a technical issue with the car. He's got back out on circuit, we do believe, but Tristan Dina Brega, our winner in the GT3 AM class in race number 1, has not had a good day here in race number 2. But meanwhile, we look from our AM drivers here for a brief moment to where's our LMP2 AMs, and it is the case that Wessels right now the leader in terms of his lap times versus Paul Walton. He is matching, if not surpassing, Paul Walton for lap time right now. The gap between the two of them in the region of 6.5 seconds, with Wessels coming up behind Chris Keenan there. But right now Wessels is doing everything he can to keep what is this man at bay as Paul Walton presses on in hot pursuit. And well, both of them will be pushing as hard as possible, particularly Paul Walton, who knows he's got it all to do here to close up to Wessels after dropping it early in the race. And as he makes his way through what is turn number 9 there and heads on towards another lap, Walton doing everything in his power to try and close down Wessels. And he's in fact just taken a whole second and a half out of Wessels through Wessels catching traffic at the worst possible point. But as Walton makes his way through turn number 1, still on that charge here, he's going to tuck him behind Keenan, gain a little bit of a slipstream run up towards turn number 2. But it is looking as though RD Supersport are on the charge here. Can they bring this one back in their favour? That will be the change. And also, is he expecting another pit stop to take on a bit of fuel at the end, or does he have an ace up his sleeve? That will be the question that we're all asking. As meanwhile, Lambert Wedder chasing after Dirt Bounce here for P6 in the GT3 Pro class as they both roll them through the left-hander at turn 5. And the Team Racing Netherlands driver here, and whilst they're battling for P6, it may not be for the spoils of being on the podium or the win, and it is the case. It'll feel like a win to them, getting a few extra points as they come on through, but it does look as though that Mercedes just able to keep the Lamborghini at bay to an extent, although the Huracan very fast through the corners. But for that Mercedes so strong and stable on the straights, and it's telling us as they make their way through 8 and down into 9. This is where the Huracan will close up, but as soon as they come out of turn number 9, this is where the Mercedes just brings out that guttural grunt and makes its way up towards turn number 1. You can see how much there Wedder closes initially, but by the time he gets close enough in the slipstream, that Mercedes has got enough legs on it as they come into the braking zone for 1. Wedder falls back as they roll on through the corner once more, and you can see there is the case now making his way through. That is Jack Wyborn, as meanwhile we can see here as Walton goes chasing after Wessels. That gap comes down a bit more, now coming down to 5.5 seconds as they make their way through the corners. But meanwhile, Richard Stanton here coming to the inside of Wyborn only moments ago. In fact, that's Lambert Wedder making his way out the inside of what is their Dirt Bounce, and they've both gone for inside moves, albeit Wedder's made this one count. Meanwhile, Stanton has not been able to make it count. You see a flash of lights there from the Dirt Bounce. I think he's trying to get into the head of Wes Wedder to try and come back at him down into turn number 3. And as they make their way down to the corner, well, it is the case that Stephan Wessels coming through, and Dirt Bounce has to give way. Wessels goes around the outside. As they roll the way on through the corners here, we can see it is the case Wedder breaking away now, and Dirt Bounce has not got a response. So how only one straight in the end? I think it was the case that Wedder just had a really good run out to 1 up towards 2. But right now, with less than 25 minutes to go, Wedder now chasing after Lucas Romano, who is the best part of 8 seconds up the road. As our drivers make the way on around and continue to do so now with the pit stop window really complete in terms of our drivers making those critical pit stops. One driver who we were talking about earlier, Sean Scooter here, well, he was passed by DDD Blaming. He's staying with the Mercedes driver, who you can see in the foreground of the camera shot, but it is the case the Racing Team Astra Blue driver does not seem to, at this time, have a response to what is DDD Blaming, and it is one of the situations whereby I think he's going to have to think about the long game here and how he can gradually inch closer. As we're hearing that Liam Tack is coming out to the pit lane currently. He's taken a second stop, and that I believe is going to drop him a little bit further down the order in terms of the GT3 AM class. But meanwhile, one driver in the GT3 AM class who's still holding on to P2, that is Mark Sykes here, who's keeping James Slates in back. In fact, Slates has dropped back to 1.2 seconds now versus the Englishman as he makes his way through turn number 2. And NXTGEN Racing with Sam Casey's UK Audi driver here. Well, is he closing up to Navarro de Boever? No. In fact, Navarro de Boever's inching that gap open lap after lap. In fact, he opened up by a further half a second that previous lap. But Mark Sykes right now at the Red Bull Ring is looking very happy with that Audi. It is a very happy Audi, I would say, and if he can keep this up, he's on for another great performance. And it's been some time since we've seen him up on the podium. Well, definitely since what was Daytona, and it is the case now that Mark Sykes pressing on here as he looks to try and keep this P2. But James Slates, I think, will try and come back at him later in the race. You can be sure of that. Slates is a driver who does come on very strong as the race goes on. But Sykes, to be fair, if he has one thing in his arsenal, it is the fact when he's in the rhythm, he's unstoppable. And right now, he is looking unstoppable as he makes his way down towards turn number 8. As he comes on through, we do look back up to what is Mark Baker in P7, the LMP2 AM class, chasing after Jonathan Collins, and you can see Collins there in the foreground as they come into turn number 5, and as they both roll through the left-hander, it is the situation whereby Baker pushing on, but you can see as soon as he gets into that draft with his medium-speed sweepers, it is the case that Baker just feeling a little bit of that dirty air off the back of Collins' car, and it's just coursing the front of the LMP2 machine, the Dallara P217, just not want to bite into the corners as much. And that's the problem in these LMP2 machines when you get in the draft, because these corners, particularly in the middle and final sectors, because they are sweepers in terms of their nature, you want to carry as much speed through the apex as possible. You get turned in tight and nice and early. When you've got that dirty air, unless you brake earlier and turn the car in even earlier on the corner, you don't have the ability to carry as much speed through the corner. Instead, you have to back off or fight a load of guttural understeer as they make their way up the hill here. And that is the thing that Mark Baker's dealing with right now. He gets the draft up towards turn 2, and that's brilliant heading up towards Remus, but it's later on the lap. As soon as we go into turn 5, that's when he starts to feel the pain. You can see how much he's closing as they come out of the braking zone and make their way onto the accelerators coming out to 2, and as they head down towards 3 now with a little bit of traffic ahead of them. You can imagine they'll both be pushing on here to try and get on through the traffic. Well, particularly Mark Baker, he'll want to clear both Van Hoenacker and Keen, and I don't think he's going to get either. No, in fact, he's not going to get either of them as they make their way out the corner, though Keenan gives them the space there as they come on through. But as they make their way now up towards what is turn number 5, this is where Baker's going to feel that pain of being stuck behind traffic. But speaking of a driver right now who's not feeling pain, here is Jeremy Boever. Although I say that, Jeremy Boever, I think, has had a little bit of an off somewhere, or a really bad start to this lap, because his teammate in the former Didi Laming is trying to run and gun down towards turn 3 alongside him here. But Boever's saying to him, no, I'm holding that inside line as they make their way down. Of course, 2 teammates battling for position. They are allowed to battle. They're not running under team orders. And as they roll them through here, it's the case that Didi Laming tried to go around the outside. He couldn't make it work, and instead has had to back off. But look who this is bringing in. Sean Scooter now has an opportunity to come back for the potential win of the GT3 Pro class with 20 minutes in the final lap to go. As they roll through the left-hander of 5, and for Scooter, it's all about staying close here. We ride on board with the Ferrari driver as he looks at that opportunity, but you can see now as they make the way on towards the run, towards turn number 8, how all 3 drivers there with the different machinery, well, Sean Scooter is just being left behind in the Ferrari, just does not have that acceleration compared to the Mercedes, but at the same time as well, he's getting the double dirty air draft of the 2 Mercedes in front of him, and that cannot be nice on the front end of that Ferrari as they make the way up towards what is turn number 1 once more. Now as they come right on through, you can see Paul Walton there cutting his way through the GT3 drivers, and as he does so, making his way through and past what was there Didi Laming. Now he's going to go on past what is Jeremy Boever and just interfering there, but all 3 drivers making it through successfully. And as they head on up towards turn 2, Sean Scooter falling back again. There could be an element of car management here, to be fair, from Scooter, in the fact that he was closing up, and now he seems to have backed off a little bit, fallen away a little bit. But also what we do have to keep in mind, albeit not on the camera now, he is Peter Lemkins. He's in P4 in the GT3 Pro class, and our top 4 in the class are separated by only 3 seconds from head to tail, and that shows how close these guys are running out on circuit in terms of relative pace as they roll them through. Speaking of another close battle which is emerging, we do have Gareth Mills trying to take the fight to Liam Tack for P6 in the GT3 AM class, and we can see here the Porsche 911 GT3R driver closing up very rapidly as they make their way out of 1, and will the Porsche a bit of a slouch on the straights compared to its peers, but he's well inside the draft, is Mills of Liam Tack as they make their way up. He'll be pushing that Porsche as much as he can. He'll be egging it on in the cockpit, I can tell you. And as they make their way up into 2, he's not got enough momentum to go for the move this time, but he's definitely looking quite dangerous as the GM Racing driver as they make the way out of turn number 2. And I think Jonathan Collins had a little bit of an off there at what is turn number 2. We can see a lot of smoke being kicked up, but he's resumed on circuit. But as he makes his way on out, we can see meanwhile Mills looking for that opportunity. He can't quite find it this time around. Instead, he has to wait for it as they come out to 3 and head up towards 5. But as they do, he's all over the back in this mad scramble versus the Ferrari driver, but not able to find a way through at this point. Instead, having to wait as we get a slight connectivity issue there. Apologies for that. But it seems to have restored itself. And right now, Mills waiting for that opportunity. In fact, he's going to have a move here up on the inside into 6, but it's not enough. He has to back out there. It was always going to close the door on him, but he is looking free. He's looking very feisty as we're hearing Jonathan Collins is into the pit lane. I think we're for some repair work to the car or for a new set of tyres. But as we look away from Mills, we do look back to Jeremy de Boever, our leader in the GT3 Pro class here, with DDD Vlaeminck tucked in behind him. And as they make the way down and around through turn number 3 once again, I do wonder how long it's going to be before Vlaeminck takes another move here. De Boever defends the inside 5, and as they roll through the corner, well, Vlaeminck's going to have to look the long way around or go for the cutback. He'll get neither, as it seems that De Boever just has the measure right now. But of course, every inch of tarmac these two battle on will give an opportunity for Scooter to close on up, and that's the thing for Sean Scooter. He will want these two teammates to take time out of one another so he can close on in as they make the way down towards turn number 8. But meanwhile, I say all that, one driver who is closing very rapidly right now to Stephan Wessels is Paul Walton here in P2 in the LMP AM class. He's got that gap down to 4.2 seconds. It was 3.5 a little bit earlier, but traffic has balanced it back out. But it is the case that Walton is stripping lap time out of Wessels, and Wessels is responding, but it is going the way of Walton right now. And with less than 17 minutes to go, you can imagine Paul Walton will do everything in his power to get that gap down to less than 2 seconds, because then on the straights, that's where you'll start to get a distant toe effect. But we do come back to the battle for the GT3 Pro lead, and you can see here how Jeremy de Boever had to hold at bay his team as they make the way in towards turn number 2. And I think, to be fair, DDD Vlaeminck has shown a lot of smarts here in terms of battling. He knows he doesn't want to battle this too hard until the very end of the race if they're going to battle, for the simple reason they don't want Scooter or Lemkin, so you can see in the rear of the picture, to creep into this and turn it into a 4-way battle for the win. The two teammates will want it to be P1, P2 from a change by DB1, but which of them is on the top step? That, of course, is the question, as we see De Boever goes a little bit wide coming out of turn number 3, and as a result, it's now going to be DDD Vlaeminck who takes the outside, but again, De Boever on the inside, just enough momentum to keep him there. But each time this happens, it gets a little bit harder. Of course, the temptation kicks in, and right now Sean Scooter inching ever closer to the pair of them as they make the way on around. But as they do, it is the case. We can see how right now Scooter just having to wait. He's got coming up his inside there. That is Richard Stanton making his way on through, and Stanton, the LMP2 machine, won't cost Scooter too much time there as they make the way on through the corners. But you can imagine that right now Scooter will be thinking, right, I've got to hang close to them both because I can't afford to lose too much time when the traffic comes on through. You can see Jeremy de Boever putting the car in the middle of the road there to signal don't go for the move to Vlaeminck as they make the way through turn number 1, and Vlaeminck bides his time and plays the patience game as they make the way now towards turn number 2. But behind him, you can see that's Baz Meacham at P4 in the LMP2 AM class, and he's got Jim Stanton chasing after him in P5 as they make the way up the hill and into the braking zone. They go foreground to the camera. That is Richard Stanton, who's a lap down on the pair of them. Baz Meacham goes overly deep, and that's going to cost him a lot of momentum as they make the way down towards turn number 3. But it's the case that Stanton, Jim Stanton, with the GT3s to come on through, does not get to capitalise as much as he would have loved to there, and as a result, that will hold him back to an extent. But you can see Stanton coming down the inside very quickly there to turn 3. He knows that he has got Baz Meacham on the ropes if he can get close enough, and therefore he's not going to waste any time in trying to push on. But as they make the way on around, I can see that Gareth Mills has found his way past Liam Tack for P6 in the GT3 AM class. That's happened off camera. But meanwhile, as I try to continue to press on through, right now Jim Stanton looking fierce versus Baz Meacham as they make the way up towards turn number 8 once again. But as they do in the meantime, one driver who in P3 of the class right now, just looking, I think, to bring the car home. He's got a 10.7 second advantage on Meacham. It is Sam Holman from Hollerton Racing here, the sole Hollerton Racing driver in this series. He's got the team on his shoulders, and it is the case that Britain right now looking very comfortable in that P3 position. And of course, we do not have Michael Price with us today, which is very unfortunate, but it is the case. I think Holman will be missing seeing Price down circuits. The two of them great rivals out on track and great friends off track, and it is the case that Holman right now looking very comfortable to really be the best of the rest outside of Walton and Wessels and being on the bottom step of that podium. He'll be pleased with this, there's no doubt about that. As we're hearing that Jack Wyborn, they've retired the cars, we're to understand it as we see Holman pressing on through towards the end. But we look from him to the battle for the GT3 Pro lead, and well, Jeremy de Boever still He has got Didi Laming tucked in very tight behind him as they make the way down the straight here, down towards turn number 3. And as they do, well, Laming tucked to the inside this time. No, he bides his time. But you can see there how it is the fact that you do have Sean Scudder and Peter Lemkins just waiting in the wings for the opportunity. And as they roll them through the corners, where it is the case that we can see that Lemkins right now, I think, just studying what's going on here, waiting for when it all kicks off. They've got time. They've got just under 15 minutes to go. So Lemkins right now needs to pick the right one. He may be doing some fuel saving right now. He may not be taking as much out of the car as the 3 in front of him are, because he will want to push hard. He will know there's an opportunity here to take the win. And by comparison, Lucas Romano, a 16-second gap between Lemkins and Romano. And that's where I think Romano has just lost out in the slipstream situation earlier on in the race, plus also perhaps a small mistake or two. But right now, Peter Lemkins wearing the flag and the banner for RP Motorsport Pro-Am and trying to get onto that potential top step when it's all said and done here today. But as he comes charging down, what about the GT3 AM situation, I hear you ask? Well, Navarro de Boever still leading by a sizable margin of what is 11 seconds over Mark Sykes. And where is Mark Sykes? Well, he's here and he has crept away from James Slates, albeit the gap is oscillating between 1 to 2 seconds. It's not over yet. Both drivers pushing hard in their LDR rates, but Mark Sykes does seem to have a slight advantage in terms of that pacing by comparison as he makes his way up towards another lap. As they come roaring on through, it is the case of Mark Sykes right now. Has lost a little bit of time with Paul Walton coming on through. That's not going to affect him too much as he makes his way on through the corner. But as he rolls on through turn number 1 and up towards 2, it is the case that James Slates by comparison will be studying, keeping his eyes on, looking for Mark Sykes to make the smallest mistakes. He just needs to stay there and keep the pressure on. And if he can do so, it will be an opportunity to try and go on the offensive right towards the end. As into the pits, interesting enough, comes Sam Holman now. Is this a scheduled stop or is it a drive-through penalty? We will wait and see. It's a stop. I think it's the case that some of our LMP2 drivers are going to have to do a second stop. And, well, as they do, Baz Beecham chasing after what is Jim Stanton here for P3 as it currently stands. But do either of those two have to stop? That will be the question as they make their way up the hill. Now, you can see in the foreground, that's Richard Stanton, who's a lap down in P8. And Richard Stanton will be looking to effectively try and provide the draft to his teammate. And as they make the way in towards turn number 2, he gives the space to Baz Beecham on the inside run out of the exit of turn number 2. So it's the case that Beecham hasn't really been costing any time there. And as they roll him down towards turn number 3, Beecham trying to come back for a potential shot of a podium here if they do not have to pit in particular. As they roll him down, Lucas Romano sets the fastest GT3 lap of the race at 29.0 in that P5 position, the GT3 Pro class. He's pressing on all the same as our drivers make the way on around. And as they do right now, Meacham trying to come back at Jim Stanton as they roll through the left-hander at turn number 5 and down towards 6. Now, as they come through here, no move for Meacham this time around, but he is staying very close. I think he's now got the mastery of staying in that draft of what is Jim Stanton. He looks straight into turn 8, but there's no way he's going to do it from that far back. There's not enough of a run for the LMP2 machines, but he's definitely looking very close. But in front of him, that's Davide Favo as they make the way through the corner, and he can't find a way on through. 10 minutes remaining now as they come roaring on down across the line here, and Baz Meacham's got to try and find another way through. But speaking of finding a way through, Peter Lemkins has closed up massively to the back of Sean Scudder, and he's looking for it to turn 7. Oh, goodness me! And the two of them have come together. Sean Scudder into the wall, as is Peter Lemkins. We can't bring you a replay of that right now. We will post-race, but my goodness, now that was a nasty moment. I think Peter Lemkins thought he had enough of his nose alongside into turn 7 to argue the case on a move. Sean Scudder shut the door in the end of the two who were looking both to be competing for the potential win. In the end, now both in wounded cars. Peter Lemkins carries on, but that promotes Lucas Romano, who comes through the camera shot there, up to P3. And, well, Lucas Romano will be thinking, how on earth am I now in a podium paying position here, where it's the case that Lemkins and Scudder came to blows. Scudder into the pit lane, and Peter Lemkins soldiering on for the time being, but I wonder how long it'll be before he needs to come in as well. But meanwhile, from them, So a little bit further around the track, it is the case that right now with Lucas Romano in that P3 position, you can see now that really opens up the battle for the win between the two changed by DB1 teammates of DD Laming and Jeremy DeBoer. They can both afford now to really take the gloves off and say, you know what, we've got less than 10 minutes to go, let's fight. As we say hello to Davidoff 2001 in the YouTube chat there, hope you're doing well. And as they make their way down towards what is turn number 5 and through, it is the case, we can see that DD Blaming here right in the railway tracks of what is Jeremy DeBoer, and well, when will he look for the move now? That is the big question as they head up and towards turn number 8. And as they do, with 8 minutes to go by the time they've cleared the last 2 corners, it is the case you'd imagine that DD Blaming will have been so closely studying what Jeremy DeBoer, his teammate, does, that now he'll look for that opportunity. As meanwhile, we see that Baz Meacham has found his way past Jim Stanton. That's happened up into turn number 2 under braking, and Stanton's going to come back. It's a very nip and tuck move there, but he doesn't quite find it in the end. He dared to dream, and meanwhile, whilst this is going on, I can tell you that Paul Walton has closed up very close to the back of what is Stephan Wessels, albeit we'll take a look at that in a second. The gap between the two of them is now 2.2 seconds. It's coming down at a rapid rate of knots as Lucas Romano of camera also sets the fastest lap of the GT3 class, of which a 28.8. But meanwhile, with these two battling, DD Laming has gone overly deep into turn number 2, but I think he's now got ahead of Jeremy DeBoer. They're battling side by side and splitting to let Jonathan Collins through there. The LMP2 driver comes through the middle of them like Moses parting the seas as they make the way down towards turn number 3, and Jeremy DeBoer goes back up the inside. There's contact between the two of them. Now surely they need to settle this down, because right now they do not want major contact between the two, because any major contact that could see both of them lose out and being on the podium, and the team lost major points as Laming goes overly deep into turn 5, and I think now they've got to settle down, because right now they are at a huge risk of spoiling the race for each other as they make the way through. They do not need to fight like this. They need to bring the points home, because these are critical points and they do not need to take one another out. But meanwhile, looking a bit further up the road once again, I can tell you that Jim Stanton has now fallen off the back of Baz Meacham, as meanwhile into the pits comes Paul Walton. Now, is this a drive-through or is this a quick splash and dash? Well, surely this has got to be a splash and dash from Paul Walton. He comes on in here, and indeed he's peeled off of what is the pit lane road. So it is the case. Well, in fact, it's a drive-through penalty. He's even just confirmed it in the chat. And Paul Walton with a drive-through for track limits, and we said there was a risk of track limits penalties accruing over the course of race and drive-throughs. So that means now where's Baz Meacham in all this? Well, he's only making his way up towards turn number 8, so there's no net effect. But meanwhile, both Jeremy DeBoer and also DD Blaming into the pits for drive-through penalties, and that means that Lucas Romano is now leading the GT3 Pro class. Oh my goodness, it's all happening in the final 10 minutes, and Lucas Romano is now your GT3 Pro leader, and I think he must be mouthing a few swear words right now as to how exactly this has happened. He'll be astonished, but he'll be thinking, right, I've got 6 minutes, bring the M4 home on the top step, and DeBoer and Laming, well, now they've got to go hunting, and you think with the contact between them plus the off tracks, did that cause them to go above the instant count limit? And I would say yes, and I think they may just be kicking one another for it afterwards as they make the way down and around. They'll give pursuit of Romano here, but it has to be said, Romano's got a 2-second gap, and I think he'll feel very comfortable with the gap he's got, as meanwhile DeBoer and Laming once again both battling into turn 5, and I think we're going to keep hearing this all the way to the finish line as they roll them through the quarters. But as they make the way down through turn at number 6, where's Peter Lempkins and all this? Well, there is Peter Lempkins in a very heavily wounded Ferrari 488, but he's soldiering on. He's not repairing the car. He's decided to carry on, and in doing so, it's going to be the case that Lempkins is going to try and bring it home to the finish. But as we look from him to Paul Walton here coming through turn number 1, it is the case right now. The RD Simsport driver 19 seconds off of Stephan Wessels. I don't think he's got any chance unless Wessels suddenly has to go into the pits for a drive-through penalty of his own, or to suddenly throw fuel in the car. Paul Walton right now has got to settle for second at best. He'll push, he'll go for the fastest lap, there's no doubt about that. But I think it is all said and done, that opportunity for the win, unless Wessels makes a grandiose error right now. I don't think that is in Stephan Wessels' dictionary, making errors at the same time as we see Walton here seems to be the one with that bad luck. But meanwhile, as they make the way on down and around through turn, well, it's turn number 3 here, is the case you see just in front. That's Arjun Kregel, I believe, battling with what is Tristan D. Nobrega, albeit for what is track position and GT3 class position, not driver position. as they make the way on through. And indeed, if you are asking there, Davidoff 2001, are these two Mercedes drivers, Jeremy de Boever and Didier Delaney, teammates? They are teammates, and they are battling. They have been battling for the last 15 minutes or so, and right now it is going all the way for them in terms of the potential win, because they're letting Lucas Romano run away, and in turn, well, I think they're battling. If they had not battled as much as they did and still had those drive-throughs, I think they would be right with Lucas Romano as they make the way on through and around towards turn number 8. Romano has just run to the distance with this as they come on through in towards turn number 8, but as they do right now, we're just seeing elsewhere what exactly is happening around on circuit. And I think the closest real battle we do have, Mark Sykes being hunted down by James Slates. They make the way out to turn number 7 for only a couple more times more now, but you can see Mark Sykes here, who's been in P2 in the GT3 AM class for some time, really the best of the rest of Navarro de Boever in a world of his own up front in the lead. Right now James Slates has come back on strong. We thought that James Slates may have been saving it all for the last couple of laps. Well, here he is. We ride on board here with James Slates, who's got a mother of all runs coming out of turn number 9. He's looking to the inside on Mark Sykes. He's going to dare to dream. Got the inside into turn 1, and with not too much longer to go here, James Slates goes up the inside, but Mark Sykes now comes back in. It's only fair, given the fact that taking that inside line means you can get the cutback if you're Mark Sykes. And as they roll and up the hill, it is the situation where Sykes is going to come on through and up towards turn number 2. He's going to defend it on the inside, but James Slates is going to chuck it around the outside, and Mark Sykes cannot come on back for the time in, and James Slates there has solved the move and got it done in terms of moving up to P2. Now, can Sykes come back any later? That is the question as they make the way on down and head up towards turn number 3. I don't think so, but meanwhile, as we look back to Paul Walton, who's on the charge, taking a bit of curb there at turn number 1. Oh, goodness me, he's got it very wrong, and well, I don't think he expected it to go up on the wall like that, and it looks as though Paul Walton's perched up on the wall, and well, that is a disaster. Now, where's Baz Meacham? Because he can't get that off the wall. It's the case. Well, there's Baz Meacham coming on through. If Paul Walton's stuck there, he's going to have to jump to the pit. All 30 are going to have to retire the car, and Walton has had to jump to the pit, which means that Baz Meacham is now up into P2. Well, I think the BRM driver on his return will be thinking, where on earth does this second place come from? And Paul Walton has got it horrifically wrong with regards to turn number 1, and oh my goodness, I have not seen an LMP perched up on a wall like that in some time. But meanwhile, Jim Stanton in P3, now in P3, will be thinking as well, well, I didn't expect to get a podium here, and now it's in my hands as they make the way around with only what is one more lap to go after this. And Stephan Wessels crosses the line. He is now on the final lap. The white flag is out for him, but we must cut away from our LMP drivers to what is Jeremy de Boever here in the far distant camera shot, still in P2 in the GT3 Pro class. He's still got his teammate tucked in behind him, and Peter Lemkins is not too far behind either. But the problem is, of course, Peter Lemkins ran a huge amount of damage on that Ferrari. I don't think he's got enough pace in the car on the straights. You can see how mangled the aerodynamics are. I don't think Lemkins can close up on the straights. As they make the way through, in this case, Lemkins is really at the mercy of the two teammates battling, but I think Lemkins and de Boever have agreed to stop battling now, because you can see they've settled into a bit of a rhythm here, and they're not really taking time out of one another anymore as they roll on through the corners. But as they come charging on through, it is the case that you can see that Peter Lemkins is doing everything he can in order to try and close on up, and well, I don't think he's got enough straight line speed in that car as they make the way around onto their final lap. But as they do now, it looks like most of the battles now are complete or about to be completed, and we do look to Stephan Wessels here with only 2 corners to go. Well, it was the case. He had to fight back to 3rd at Daytona, but now he took the win in the sprint, and as he comes through the final 2 corners, he's going to make it 2 wins out of 2, and the Racing Team Astra Blue driver from South Africa is your winner in the feature race at the Red Bull Ring. It's Stephan Wessels who crosses the line 46 seconds ahead of Baz Meacham, who will be coming home in P2 in due course. And where is Baz Meacham, I hear you ask? Well, here he is, and will the BRM driver. To be fair, he was away at Daytona and we missed the Welshman dearly for it, but as he makes his way through the arena section right now, I think he will be very pleased at how this has all played out when it's all said and done. A good result in the sprint. Qualifying didn't quite go to plan, but the BRM driver right now soldiering on and coming through the order, and Jim Stanton a bit further back, but the battle between the two of them has subsided. So we see here Baz Meacham making his way on around, and as he comes through the final corner, it will be a P2 here in the feature for Baz Meacham. BRM have got their championship back on track, and as he crosses the line, it will then be Jim Stanton who comes home in P3 in the LMP2 AM class. We then got a little while to go, and there's Lucas Romano, who, after an up and down race and his two rivals picking up drive-through penalties, it's Lucas Romano from Belgium for RP Motorsport Prime who takes the win in the GT3 Pro class ahead of Jeremy de Boever, and behind him Didi Valaimin close behind. They complete the podium there in the GT3 Pro class, and then it will be Navarro de Boever who comes on through. You can tell he's happy in that cockpit. The challenge by DB2 driver from Belgium takes another win to his tally, and that is a well-earned win when all's said and done. James Slaton held on to P2 come the finish as he crosses the line, and Mark Sykes has come home P3, albeit a lap down because of when the final lap was triggered, and Mark Sykes already making his way into the pits. But to be fair for James Slaton and Mark Sykes, they both put in a fantastic drive today, and they both deserved it when all was said and done with regards to finishing on that podium, and they have picked up huge points in this campaign. Well, my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, what a superb race. But we do have to look around right now. Well, Wessels has already made his way into the pit lane, but Lucas Romano, I think he's going to be looking back after tonight and thinking, how on earth did I just take the win in the feature at Red Bull Ring? And the simple answer is he didn't put a foot wrong. He didn't get into any battles. He just simply put lap after lap in, and he didn't pick up a drive-through penalty. And the RP Motorsport Pro-Am driver here just finds a way to deliver each and every time. And he was a little bit out of sorts at Daytona, but he's back now. And the thing is, Jeremy de Boever here, he'll be thinking that today it's the case that we're challenged by DB1. They're both on the podium, P2, P3. It should have been P1 and P2 as he makes his way on down. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, what a cracking feature race. We're just going to take a brief breather. We'll be back in approximately 4 to 5 minutes for our post-round interviews. You won't want to miss them. Don't go anywhere. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're all set to conduct our post-round interviews with our three interviewees for this evening. But before we do, I just do need to clarify one technical point with regards to some of our drivers, which I think is only fair given the fact that it is something that personally affects a number of drivers here and may fill you all in on some of the circumstances that occurred over the course of tonight's races. So you may have noticed in particular, I've been informed through Elwyn Sykes as part of Racing Team Astra here, that it's the case that a number of our South African drivers, particularly the Racing Team Astra drivers, either were not able to take part tonight, or alternatively had to jump to the pits due to what is effectively what I like to refer to as engine failure, as it'd be the equivalent of that in real world racing. But unfortunately, it's because of either connection issues or alternatively, it's the case that perhaps power supplies turn off on regards to PCs. And unfortunately, that's in most cases the exact problem. For those unaware, South Africa has recently been struggling with electricity supply, and particularly now they're entering the winter season, the power supply grid is taking a lot more strain, and therefore South Africa has a number of scheduled power cuts in the different regions of South Africa. And these can happen for a couple of hours a day, all the way up to 8 hours a day. And it hit most of the Racing Team Astra drivers over the course of the racing last night. And to give you a quick summary, you'll have seen that Davide Favo, when he was able to start one of the races, immediately had to jump to the pits, and that was because of the fact that a power cut kicked in there. He rejoined 4 laps later. Lorenzo Gualtieri was not even able to attend tonight because when the power cut out, well, it is normally a lot of the drivers do run on backup supply generators, but his backup supply generator was not working, so he didn't have a backup in place. As a result, he wasn't able to race. Tristan Dinabrega had a connectivity issue, which was very unfortunate in the feature because he was looking very strong. That was a network connectivity issue feature, a network connectivity issue, I should say, in the feature rather than power supply. And it's the case that Elwyn Sykes, unfortunately, had a PC turn off midway through the feature around lap 8. But he did join towards the end to pick up some points on the board. But meanwhile, Stephan Wessels and Sean Scudder did survive the situation, and that's just to clarify regards to those drivers. So when you hear us refer to it as what is, say, the retirement due to car technical issues, that just puts you in the perspective regards to some of our South African drivers and what they're experiencing. But they do love racing as part of this series and are giving it their all. And speaking of one South African driver who is giving it his all, and we're going to interview him now, it is, of course, Stephan Wessels. Let's bring him on in to the interview room and hear what he's got to say. So as we bring Stephan into the interview room, Stephan, another superb pair of drives from yourself in the LMP2 machine, and what a way to kick off the tour of the European continent with back-to-back wins. How do you feel your night was at the Red Bull Ring?
Hey, Paul, no, good man. How you doing?
All well, thank you. But more importantly, how are you feeling with regards to those results? Because Paul Walton kept you on your toes, particularly in what was the sprint race.
Yeah, look, myself and Paul, I could see through practice that our lap times we were within a 10 for 2 either way per lap. So I was expecting quite a tough race. And yeah, we had it. So race 1, I mean, the first 2 laps he was on my tail. There was nothing between us. He was in the slip. And then he got a slowdown, which gave me the breathing room I needed in the sprint race to kind of just get into a bit of a rhythm, and that was kind of it for the sprint race. Yeah, I'm just happy to complete the race without mistakes. The feature race was a bit different. I got a very good start. There was a bit of a pile up into turn 1, and I managed to just hang back and undercut a lot of the guys, and Paul was on the outside, so he had to brake and not get involved in the incident. So that meant I gained quite a bit on turn 1, so I was immediately in 5th position from 9th. So that was very fortunate from my side. And from there, I knew I had a bit of a gap on him. So the trick was just to take it easy. You know, this track limits is a big factor in this game, this track. Slowdowns and also getting those X1s that can quickly build up to the limit and you can get a drive through. So it was fairly easy sailing up to get to Holman. Holman was a bit tricky to get past. But once I got past him, I could just maintain the gap to Paul. And then with the traffic initially, I was probably a bit too safe. So Paul gained quite a bit on me. And then when I got clean air, every time I got clean air, I could maintain or increase the gap slightly. So I knew as long as I had clean air, I was fine. So yeah, that was that was my strategy. And then obviously at the end, Paul was pushing really hard to get to me, and I think he just went a bit wide one too many times, and it ended in him getting a drive-through.
Well, indeed, he did push hard, ended up getting a drive through it, and then only a couple of laps later, when pushing for the fastest lap, ended up hooking the car up on the exit barrier at turn one. The car's perched up there, and he had to jump to the pits, but it shows how hard he was pushing. But to be fair, you were pushing very hard as well, and particularly in qualifying. Just take us through that shootout between yourself and Walton. The two of you were exchanging lap times left, right, and centre.
Yes, it was. Look, the quali lap, I was a lap or two early. I was on a similar lap time, and I went wide, so it didn't count. So I had to kind of like the last lap was everything or nothing, and I'm just very happy and that I got that last lap nailed because I'm very happy with the lap time, and it was also the last opportunity I had. So for some reason in this series, I seem to always get it on the last lap, which is not planned. I promise you that much. I'd much rather do it on lap two and have it over and done with. So, yeah.
Oh. Well, indeed, you do have a knack for pulling out these last laps in the bag, but we do hope one day to see one of these huge laps from you earlier on in the qualifying session. But still, a very strong qualifying lap in the end, which gave you that pole position. Of course, appreciate you taking us through how the races played out in both the sprint and the feature earlier on. But I do have to ask with regards to the feature race. Did you have a particular strategy in mind, or did you sort of base your strategy on how quickly you progressed through the traffic and made your way into the lead?
Um, so initially, after winning the sprint race, and knowing Paul was going to start in front of me on the feature race, I was pretty much happy with trying to. Obviously, you're going to race for the win, but if he gets through the traffic faster than me, my aim was just to get to at least second place and get that fastest lap, to minimize the point difference. And then after the start, and the way the start happened, and I managed to pull about a 10-second gap. Um, it was pretty much you know, um, just keep everything as smooth as possible, keep it consistent as possible. I took it too safe. At some stages, I took it too safe, and then I gave away a bit of unnecessary lap time. But yeah, so then I had to push again. Like in the middle of the race, I did quite a good fastest lap in 19.3, which a very good lap. I was very happy about that. And yeah, so the strategy was just he pitted. I knew I could go a couple of laps longer because the LMP is at its best on low fuel. Um, but at that same time, I also got traffic in one or two spots that actually meant that he gained about 2 seconds through that whole encounter. So yeah, that wasn't, in hindsight, wasn't the best move, but in terms of car pace, it is normally the better way to go.
Oh, indeed, and it showed throughout in terms of how you played the race out to your advantage, and your fastest lap of a 19.36, one of the fastest we've seen all week. Indeed, the fastest lap of the feature race by 4 tenths over Paul Walton. And now, having taken, if not all of the points, and the vast majority of the points from the Red Bull Ring today, we head to Hockenheim in a week's time for the German circuit. How are you feeling for the twists and turns of Hockenheim?
Uh, I've never played it in iRacing. I did a couple of laps yesterday. It's going to be interesting. It's a track I like. I would have liked the old one, the old F1 big one through the forest. That would have been cool. But yeah, it's a track I always liked. Being a old school Michael Schumacher fan, going back to Hockenheim. So that connection is there. But in terms of having raced it, I haven't raced it since like F1 2001 or 2002 or something like that. So yeah, I haven't been there in a while.
Oh, goodness me. Well, we look forward to seeing you take to the German circuit in a week's time and seeing how you get on then and there. But until then, congratulations on two stellar performances today, Stephan. And well, the momentum does seem to be with you, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit again in a week's time.
Cool, Paul. Keep up.
Will do. You too. Have a lovely evening.
Cheers, cheers. Bye.
So hearing there from Stephan Wessels, very pleased with his performances today, but very interested in terms of how he broke down the analysis of the two races, and particularly in that feature race with regards to the fact, saying to himself that sometimes he took his foot off the gas a little bit too much and therefore had to push a bit harder, but in the end, balancing out the car and really enjoying the LMP2 machine when it was on low fuel, when he could get the best out the car, and that stellar fastest lap, but at the same time as well, one of those things where I think in the back of his mind, he was always thinking about how could he keep one step ahead of Paul Walton. In the end, Walton's race becoming undone in the feature in particular through his own mistakes, picking up that drive-through penalty. But at the same time, it'll be interesting to see how the dynamic between the two really plays out, because Walton is really playing the pursuer at the moment. We haven't seen Wessels really be the one to chase. And also that statement about qualifying, about he could assure us that he doesn't leave it to the last lap to try and go for pole position, even though it looks that way. And we'll look forward to seeing whether he can deliver a fast lap out of the box at the Hockenheimring, given the fact, as he was saying there right at the end, he prefers the older version of the circuit, which takes you all the way into the German woodland. But now, of course, we're in the more arena-based circuit, and all the twists and turns there are going to be very challenging. But a lot of straights as well at the circuit, it should be noted. Now, we do come from Stephan Wessels, our winner in the LMP2 AM class in both races, to Tristan Dino Brega. Now, I haven't got the opportunity to talk to Tristan Dino Brega, I must say, unfortunately, due to the fact that he's not available due to the rolling power cut situation in South Africa. However, he has shared with me a good number of thoughts, which he's asked me to read out live on air, so I'm going to do so. So this is the thoughts directly from our GT3 AM driver, who finished as the winner in the sprint and 8th in the feature. So, from Tristan himself, good evening everyone. Thank you for what's been an amazing season so far. It's been a pleasure to get to know some new drivers, and so far I am loving my first ever season in the NXTGEN community. And thank you to Paul, who has very kindly offered to read this out for me. There's a real community vibe here, and I'm really looking forward to see how the season progresses. In terms of round 5, Red Bull Ring offered up some challenges that we've not experienced this season so far. Not an easy track to overtake on, but at the same time, you can't really build up a gap either if someone is using your slipstream. And we did see that quite a bit in the race, to be fair, with regards to the slipstream situation, particularly in the feature, where Dino Brega and indeed a number of drivers just could not actually move up the order. They were in the slipstream train. Interesting perspective, qualifying also offered up a different challenge in that the classes were split, i.e. the trial that occurred this week with regards to the LMPs out before the GT3s, and it's interesting to see it going out with only 9 minutes left to set a lap time. All the GT3 cars left the pit lane together and immediately became a fight for track position as we all built up heat into our tyres. Tristan was able to slot into a good spot and get the perfect lap into take pole, which is very happy about. Navarro de Boever that is, has been excellent so far and has a commanding lead in the championships at every point counts. That's in reference to 2 points for pole position. But from pole in the sprint, Tristan says he was able to get a good start and break away with Romano, and that is, of course, Lucas Romano, who was leading the pro class. And from there, we worked together, and I was pleased to finally break my bad luck in the sprint races. I grabbed the win and the fastest lap. And things got real in the features. I started second to last on the grid, and as I mentioned earlier, overtaking is super tricky around this track, especially in the DRS train, or slipstream train, DRS standing for drag reduction system, a system in Formula 1. Where we all use each other's slipstream down the straights. I managed to grab a couple of positions off the start, but then got stuck behind a train of AM and Pro drivers in the GT3 class. I knew I had more pace in hand, but I couldn't extract it in the traffic. There was a few hairy moments whilst we all jostled positions, and I quickly found myself on a very high instant count. With this in mind, I decided to play the long game, so I backed off and got into a comfortable rhythm, and we did see Dino Brega back the car off very gradually, to be fair. And the car was also quite heavily damaged, so an early pit stop strategy would play into my hands, and it'd give me a clean air and fixed car. When I saw Romano pit behind me, I knew my pit window was opening. 2 laps later, I pitted and came out just ahead of Lucas Romano. I decided to let him go and use his slipstream to get some good laps in. We were working well together, and a couple of laps later, I found myself P2 in class and not so far behind Navarro. I was relishing the battle that was about to ensue with Navarro, but unfortunately, that never came to pass, and I disconnected from the server due to technical difficulties. When I rejoined, I was 2 laps down and all the way down in P9 in the class. It's a real shame because I've taken a heavy hit once again in the championship, and we lost out some really valuable team points of racing Team Astra Blue, and particularly even with Sean Scudder as well, having that incident with Peter Lemkins towards the end of the race, which saw both of them demoted off of the podium. I have to say congrats to Navarro, however, for a flawless race in the feature. He grabbed the fastest lap as well, so hats off to him. Also want to mention my teammate Stephan Wessels, who we spoke to only moments ago, for flying the Racing Team Astra Blue flag high with his double win. Sean Scudder was also right up there, so the team momentum is strong at the moment. Can't wait for the next round, and I'm looking forward to the battles and challenges that lie ahead. Thanks again to the admin team and everyone involved behind the scenes to run what is such an epic championship. Have a great evening. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Well, it is the case there. Tristan Dinabrega, very happy and very articulate in his words. To be fair, he hasn't been in the interview room before, and I want to read all that out for him because he's really enjoying the racing, as you can hear, ladies and gentlemen. And as he's put in the YouTube chat, the disconnect wasn't really fair. But that's why we do say it's the equivalent of the engine failing on the car. It does happen. If anybody does remember back in the Formula One Championship in 2016, I think it was 2016, which Nico Rosberg went on to win. And of course, Lewis Hamilton's famous engine failure. If I remember the circuit correctly, it was at Sepang in Malaysia, or I could be wrong about the circuit name, where he said it's almost as if God does not want him to win the championship. And it can happen. It can go against you. And Tristan Dinabrega has been the beneficiary of a huge amount of bad luck, but to be fair, his pace is telling, and I'm sure the tide will turn as we move towards the end of the first half of the season next week, if not in the second half of the season. We look forward to seeing how he gets on. But now we must come to our final interviewee for today, and that is Lucas Romano. He's been waiting very patiently in the interview waiting room, and let's bring him on in very quickly and now indeed. So as we look to bring Lucas Romano into the interview room, our winner, of course, in both the sprint and the feature in the GT3 Pro class, we bring him in. And as he joins us, Lucas, brilliant drive in the sprint, a surprising result in the feature. How do you feel about how your day at Red Bull Ring's gone?
Good evening, Paul. Yeah, especially for the feature race, that was insane what happened. But yeah, let's start with the sprint, I guess. Had an okay quali. Maybe could have gone a little bit faster, but it's difficult to avoid an off track and still do a good lap. But okay, it was okay, and then managed to pull a gap with Tristan. We had some very, very nice racing. I think the gap was always smaller than 1 second. And we pulled away from the rest, so that was very nice teamwork. Yeah, teamwork, we're not a team, but... But yeah, we're very pleased with the result.
Oh, indeed. And in the sprint race, we saw that back and forth teamwork between yourself and Tristan Dinabrega. And I have to ask you, with that, we saw the two of you sort of break way off into the distance. Did it feel odd at all working with one of the AM class drivers and the two of you seeming just on a pace that was unmatched by everybody else? Or did you expect it, given the fact that the Red Bull Ring is all about the draft?
I've seen Tristan's pace in the previous races, and I know he's a very fast guy. So I was counting on it a little bit. As we saw in practice and then quali, his laps were very, very good. And yeah, he showed also in the race, and I was glad to overtake him in the last lap, but he left some good space, so we took no risks. But yeah, looking forward to race with him again.
Oh, indeed. Now, coming on to the feature race, we heard from Tristan Dinabrega only moments ago about the challenge of trying to gain places, given the fact that everyone's in the slipstream train. It looked as though you were suffering from the same situation the BMW M4. You looked fast, but everybody looked fast on the straights.
Yeah, for me in the BMW, it's very hard to overtake. Second corner was actually the only place I managed to do overtakes at the Red Bull Ring. So, like Tristan said already, I went in very, very early. As soon as my crew chief told me that the pit window was open, I went in, tried to get in some good laps, and yeah, my laps weren't very good trying to do the undercut, as seen, because Tristan was still ahead of me after his pit stop. But yeah, I was very, very fortunate with the things happened in front of me. Peter crashed with Sean, I think, and yeah, Dida and Jeremy got a drive-through. But that's always the risk at the Red Bull Ring.
Oh, indeed. And just on that, of course, we saw you pit early and as a result looking to get yourself clear space and then run the pace to the end. I do have to ask, at that point when you came out and you saw everyone had completed their pit stops, before we saw Peter Lemkins have the incident with Sean Scooter, and then Didi Devalaming and Jeremy Boever coming to blows, and I think in the process of picking up contact, adding to their incident count and leading to the drive-through, were you thinking at that point, you know what, I'm just going to settle for a top 5 and that's it? Or were you thinking something's going to happen?
Oh, no, exactly. I was in 5th and saw there were 15 minutes to go. I tried to get the fastest lap. I managed that, and I was really happy. For me, the race was actually over. I was in cruise mode, and But then I saw the things in front of me and started to push a little bit. So I could pull a little gap. And suddenly I won the race. It's very strange.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of that fastest lap, the only driver in the IMB Raceway lobby, I should tell you, to set a 28 in race conditions in the feature. A phenomenal lap there, and indeed showing the pace that you had at your disposal. And I just have to ask, when you crossed the line in the lead, so those final couple of laps, what was the thought process going through your head other than what on earth has happened?
I don't think I can swear. So, but it was really strange because what happened? At first, I thought Dida and Jeremy needed to do a splash and dash, but then it seemed to be a drive-through. I had no idea what was going on at the moment, but I just keep my head together and get to the finish.
Oh, indeed, and every point counts, and particularly today, the momentum in the championship is going to swing back to you versus Jeremy de Boever. We head to the Hockenheimring in a week's time, the German circuit. How are you feeling for the venerable circuit?
Let's see. I know the track well, but not particularly good at it. So, we'll see what comes.
Oh, we will indeed. And of course, home turf for the Mercedes machines, but also quite close to home for the BMWs. But until then, congratulations once again on your double wins today. A perfect result. And we look forward to seeing you out on track in a week's time.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
You too. Take care. So hearing there from Lucas Romano in his own words, and he's not allowed to swear on the broadcast because we tried to keep this broadcast PG, of course, for those of you who are younger viewers. But you could just sense there that mixture of emotions with regards to the sprint, which was a very well managed race by Lucas Romano alongside Tristan Dino Brega, the two of them working together there across the GT3 driver classes. And, well, Romano just knowing how to play at the pace and the strategy, but that frustration of being stuck in the slipstream train in the feature where he could make some early ground and only able to make moves into turn 2, he was saying. Other than that, there was no real way to make moves. And in the end, pitting early to try and gain some sort of advantage. And then in P5, the race was over until it all kicked off in front of him. P3, P4 took one another out, so Sean Scott and Peter Lemkins took one another out of the equation. And indeed, Didi Valemi and Jeremy de Boever both had drive-through penalties. And that's how Romano jumped into lead. And that just goes to show you that in sim racing, and indeed real-world racing, it's not over until you've crossed the checkered flag, until you've crossed that finish line and the results are confirmed. Until then, anything can happen. And today it was the case that Lucas Romano, well, I think for quite a bit of luck on his side, albeit he was putting in a lot of strong laps, to be fair. That fastest lap, a phenomenal fastest lap, a 28.9 in the GT3 class there. But it goes to show you keep your head down and get on with it, and you never know what will happen by the end. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is all of our interviews for tonight. Unfortunately, we didn't have a fourth interviewee available. But with that, thank you very much for watching. And if you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out, our official racing website. That is nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, if you are Facebook inclined, you can take a look at our official Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. On top of that, we'd like to say a huge thank you to our partners once again, IMB Raceware, their website imbraceware.com, because without them we'd not be able to bring you a Lobby 2 in its splendour and glory. And now we must look ahead to round number 6, where the racing will occur on Wednesday the 18th of May, but we'll be bringing you the broadcast Friday the 20th of May 2022. Reserve the date in your calendars, ladies and gentlemen, because at the Hockenheimring and the Baden-Württemberg circuit it is the case that it is tight, it is twisty, but there's also some scintillating straights, and it will be one of those races that you will not want to miss for the overtaking action. And you never know, as we come towards the end of the first half of the championship season, how the championships will turn. Will we see the favourites extend their leads, or will we see their rivals rise? We'll have to find out in a week's time. But until then, thank you very much for tuning in. We have been Next Gen Racing. I've been your host, commentator and broadcaster, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain or Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, have a great weekend. Remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.